What would you do if the only thing standing between you and complete darkness was a stranger's porch light? He had everything: a $1 billion empire, a name that moved markets, a face on magazine covers. And yet, on the coldest night of October, Adrian Sterling sat alone on the floor of an empty house, holding his 6-year-old daughter while she slept against his chest, and felt absolutely nothing except the specific, hollow weight of a man who had survived something he was never supposed to survive. Across the street, one light was on. Just one. If this story moves you, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this light travels. The moving truck left at 7:15. Adrian watched it go from the front window, one hand pressed flat against the cold glass, the other wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. He didn't wave. He didn't move. He just stood there as the truck's red taillights disappeared around the corner of Maple Creek Road, taking with them the last visible proof that anyone had helped him carry anything into this house. He was on his own now. That was, he reminded himself, the entire point. Sycamore Lane was the kind of street that existed in the soft memory of people who'd grown up somewhere small and safe. 12 houses. Ancient oak trees with roots that had long ago begun lifting the sidewalk slabs in uneven waves. A fire hydrant painted red and gold by someone who'd done it decades ago and never touched it again. The neighborhood smelled like cut grass and chimney smoke and something vaguely sweet, maybe a neighbor's apple tree dropping its last fruit of the season. It was, by every measurable standard, completely ordinary. That was why Adrian had chosen it. He turned from the window and walked back through the front hallway, stepping over a box labeled Kitchen, Maya C, and another one that just said Maya in large, careful letters. His own handwriting, deliberate and neat, the kind of handwriting a man develops when he's learned that carelessness costs more than time. The house was his parents' house, had been his parents' house. Past tense now for 3 years in his mother's case and 6 in his father's. He hadn't set foot inside it since the estate was settled, and walking through it tonight, past the coat hooks by the door his father had installed crooked and never fixed, past the section of the kitchen floor that still creaked in that particular way, felt less like coming home and more like reading a letter written to someone who no longer existed. He'd grown up in this house, moved away at 18, then to the East Coast for college, then further into a life that had nothing in common with this quiet street, except the man it had originally produced. He stood in the doorway of the room that used to be his. The walls were bare now. The old furniture had been cleared out years ago. There was nothing in here except a sleeping bag unrolled on the floor, a small lamp plugged into the wall, and Maya, his daughter, 6 years old, dark-haired, currently curled into a shape that looked physically impossible, sleeping with the total commitment only children can manage. She had her thumb near her mouth. She'd mostly stopped sucking it, but in sleep the old habit crept back, and Adrian had quietly decided he was never going to mention it. He leaned against the doorframe and watched her breathe. This was the thing that the magazine profiles never captured, the thing that no quarterly earnings report, no profile in Forbes, no documentary about the youngest self-made billionaire of his generation had ever come close to touching. The way watching your kids sleep could simultaneously be the most peaceful and the most terrifying experience a person could have. Peaceful because she was safe and warm and completely untroubled. Terrifying because the distance between safe and not safe was something Adrian understood in his body in a way most people never would. He pushed that thought away. He was good at that. He'd had years of practice. He went back to the kitchen, set the cold coffee in the microwave, and stood at the back window while it reheated. The backyard was dark and overgrown. He'd need to deal with that. And through the fence he could see the amber glow of the neighbor's porch light next door. Not directly next door. Diagonally across through the side yard. One house on this street had its porch light on at, he checked his phone, 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in October. He didn't think anything of it. The microwave beeped. He drank the coffee standing at the counter and looked at the boxes stacked around him and felt the silence of the house settle over him like something physical. The first week was, in a word, brutal. Adrian had hired a local moving and setup company to handle the furniture, so beds, basic kitchen table, couch, so the house wasn't uninhabitable. But there was a significant difference between not uninhabitable and functional, and Adrian spent most of that first week learning exactly where that line was. The hot water heater made a sound like a dying animal every time he turned it on. 2 of the kitchen outlets didn't work. The back door lock stuck so badly that he had to lean his shoulder into it every time, and once he almost went through the glass panel when it gave way suddenly. The heating system, original to the house he suspected, or close to it, produced heat in 2 modes, off and overwhelming. He dealt with all of this by himself, at night, after Maya was asleep, working through the problems methodically. He could have called someone. He could have had the entire house renovated by a professional crew within a week, given his resources. He chose not to. There was something, he couldn't fully articulate it, something important about figuring out where the breaker box was and which fuses corresponded to which rooms. About lying on his back under the kitchen sink to assess a slow leak. About being a man who fixed things with his hands, even badly, even slowly. The company was aware he'd taken a leave of absence. His executive team, his assistant Priya, his COO Marcus, they all knew he needed time. He'd structured things carefully before leaving, the way he structured everything, with contingencies and clear lines of authority. Sterling Capital ran itself well enough that a few months of reduced oversight wouldn't shake anything loose. He was not checking his email. He was. But he was trying not to. Maya adjusted faster than he expected. She was a resilient kid. A little too self-contained sometimes, a little too watchful, but resilient. On the 3rd morning, she found the backyard and spent an hour examining the overgrown grass like a scientist conducting field work, naming the bugs she found and informing Adrian gravely that there was an entire civilization under the old stepping stones. "Are you going to relocate them?" he asked, sitting on the back step with his coffee. "No," she said, deeply offended. "It's their home." He enrolled her in Maple Creek Elementary on a Thursday. She got into the car that morning without complaint, her small backpack on her back, her lunchbox in her hand, and said, "I know I won't know anyone." "That's right," he said. "That's okay," she said. "I'm interesting." He almost laughed. He covered it by starting the car. He met Hannah Brooks on a Friday evening, 11 days after he moved in. He'd walked down to the end of the block to retrieve a piece of Maya's chalk art, a drawing of what she called the whole neighborhood family, though she'd only been there long enough to draw the houses from imagination, that had blown off the porch in the wind. He was bent over picking it up when he heard the gate next door open. Not the house directly beside his, the one across and diagonal, the modest yellow-painted house with the porch light. She was carrying 2 grocery bags and a canvas tote that was clearly overloaded, and she was managing all of it while also trying to close the gate behind her with her elbow, and it wasn't going well. "Here," Adrian said, and crossed the sidewalk and held the gate closed. She looked up. She had dark blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, the kind that had started neat and gotten less neat over the course of a day. Brown eyes. A blue knit sweater with a small hole near the left cuff. She looked, not startled exactly, cautious, like someone who had learned to quickly assess whether a stranger was going to be a problem. "Thanks," she said. Then, a beat later, "You moved in on Maple Creek?" 11 days ago, he said. "The old Whitmore place." Something shifted in her expression, recognition, and something softer. "That was the Whitmore place. You know the Whitmores?" "They were my parents," he said. She looked at him more carefully then. "I'm sorry," she said. "For your loss." He nodded. People said "I'm sorry for your loss" in the way they said most necessary things, as a form of acknowledgement rather than an expression of genuine emotion. Because what else could you say? But the way she said it had a quality of directness that made it feel less like a formality. "Hannah Brooks," she said, and extended the hand not holding the overloaded canvas tote. "Adrian Sterling," he said, and shook it. "These are heavy," she said, indicating the bags. "Can I—" "No, I'm good. I've been carrying them from the bus stop for 15 years. She got the gate latched and started up her front path. Then she stopped and looked back. "Do you drink coffee?" "Yes." "I make too much every morning. I'm not being weird. I just genuinely make too much and throw half of it away, which is wasteful. My grandmother would be horrified. If you want coffee at 8 in the morning, just knock. She said all of this in a matter-of-fact way, like she was reading from a list of practical facts about herself, and then she went inside without waiting for his answer. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment. He knocked at 8 the next morning. Well, the kitchen of Hannah Brooks's house was small and somewhat cluttered and smelled like coffee and dried herbs and something faintly floral that he later identified as the bunch of eucalyptus she kept in a jar near the window because she'd read it repelled spiders. "Does it work?" he asked the first time he noticed it. "I have no idea," she said. "But I haven't seen any spiders, so either it's working or I just don't have spiders." That's not a very scientific approach. "I'm not a scientist," she said. "I'm a bookkeeper." She set a mug in front of him. "How do you take it?" "Black?" "Good," she said. "That's easy." She sat down across from him with her own mug and pulled her legs up under her on the chair in a way that suggested this was simply how she sat in her own kitchen, and she wasn't going to rearrange herself for a neighbor she'd just met. He liked that. He didn't say so. She was a bookkeeper for 3 small businesses, a florist, a plumbing company, and a dental office, all of which she handled remotely. She'd inherited the house from her grandmother 2 years ago, and before that she'd been renting in the city and handling the commute. The inheritance had changed things, though she said it in a way that suggested changed wasn't entirely synonymous with improved. "The house needs work," she said, drinking her coffee. "My grandmother was great at many things, but maintenance was not one of them. I'm handling it as I can." "What kind of work?" he asked. She looked at him sideways. "Why?" "Just curious." "The fence on the east side is basically decorative at this point," she said. "The gutter on the back is separating. There's a section of porch railing that, I've roped it off. It's not dangerous unless someone decides to ignore the rope and lean on it, which, in my experience, people will do." "Fair assessment of people," he said. She seemed to decide he was all right because she settled a little more comfortably into the chair. "Why did you come back? To your parents' house, I mean. You don't have to answer that. I'm just curious." "I wanted somewhere that didn't have a history I built myself," he said. She thought about that for a moment. "That's an interesting way to put it. It's the most accurate way. What history did you build?" He looked at her. She met his eyes without any particular self-consciousness. "I'm from the city originally," he said, which was true. "I've been working mostly for the last decade. It catches up with you." "Yeah," she said, and something in the way she said it told him that she understood that, at least, the catching up. He brought Maya over on the 3rd morning, not because he'd planned it. Maya had simply decided, in the way 6-year-olds decided things that were apparently non-negotiable, that she wanted to meet the coffee lady. She had observed from the front window that Adrian went to the house across the street every morning, and she had reached the conclusion that the person who lived there was therefore interesting. "This is Maya," Adrian said, standing on Hannah's porch. Maya looked up at Hannah with the evaluating gaze she reserved for people she was deciding about. Hannah crouched down to eye level without making a big production of it. "I'm Hannah," she said. "Your dad drinks all my extra coffee." "He drinks a lot of coffee," Maya said. "My old nanny said it was too much." "People say that," Hannah said. "They're probably right." "Do you have any animals?" Maya asked. "I have a fish," Hannah said. "He's not very interactive, but he exists." Maya considered this. "What's his name?" "Gerald." Maya nodded slowly, like she was filing this away. "Okay," she said. "Can I see Gerald?" That was how it started. No. The fence came down on a Wednesday in the 3rd week. Not all of it, just the east side, the section Hannah had described as decorative. A panel had separated from a post during a night of wind, and it was lying in the grass between their properties when Adrian went out in the morning. He looked at it for a while. He went to the hardware store. He came back. He was replacing the post anchor when Hannah came out of her back door. "What are you doing?" she said. "The post anchor rusted through," he said. "It's why the panel went over. I'll reset it." She looked at the fence. She looked at him. "I didn't ask you to do that." "No," he agreed. "I was going to handle it." "When?" She made a face. When I had time and money at the same time, which is a scheduling challenge. He turned back to the post. I've got time this morning. There was a pause. He expected her to argue further. She had, he was learning, a strong sense of exactly what she did and didn't owe people, and she applied the same standard to what people owed her. She didn't like the feeling of being in debt to anyone, even for offense. I'll make lunch, she said finally. He looked over his shoulder. You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to, she said. I'm choosing to. There's a difference. She went back inside. He replaced the fence. Lunch was homemade tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches, served at her kitchen table. Maya ate 3/4 of a sandwich and then fell asleep on Hannah's couch, with Gerald the fish's bowl positioned at eye level, apparently so they could both nap. She does that, Adrian said, just drops off. She's a good sleeper, Hannah said. That's healthy. Her pediatrician says the same thing. Hannah wrapped her hands around her soup mug. The afternoon light came through the window and caught the small scar on her chin. He'd noticed it before, a faint line, the kind that healed pale. He didn't ask. Can I ask you something? She said. You can ask, he said. You said your parents were gone. How long have you been... She paused. How long have you been dealing with things alone? He turned his spoon in his soup. That depends on what you mean by alone. Fair enough, she said. My wife died when Maya was 2, he said. He said it the way he always said it, flat, clean, like a fact rather than a wound. He'd learned that was the only way to say it without the conversation collapsing into other people's discomfort. So, 4 years. I'm sorry, Hannah said. People say that. People mean it, she said. Sometimes. He looked at her. What happened with your family? She took a drink of her coffee. My parents split when I was 9. My dad went to Florida, remarried, has a whole separate family there. We're not close. My mom died 8 years ago. Cancer. She said it with the same flatness he'd used, and he recognized it as the same tool. My older brother Cale is in Denver. He's good. We talk. And your grandmother? Something softened in her face. She was the one who stayed, she said simply. She was always the one who stayed. He understood that in a way he didn't try to articulate. October slid into November. The mornings became cold enough that their breath showed when he walked across the street for coffee. Maya started school properly and came home with drawings and complaints about a boy named Parker who wouldn't stop making the same knock-knock joke, and an unexpected friendship with a girl named Danny, whose mother was apparently a spectacular baker. She sent cookies, Maya announced, presenting a tin to Adrian. Who? Danny's mom. She set the tin on the counter with the satisfaction of someone who had accomplished a significant diplomatic exchange. I said you'd probably want to send something back, so I told her you were learning to cook. I'm not learning to cook. I told her you were, Maya said, opening the tin. So now you have to. He told Hannah about this over coffee the next morning. She laughed, a real laugh, not a polite one, the kind that involved her whole face and made her set her mug down to avoid spilling it. She's 6, Hannah said. She's negotiated me into baking, he said. Do you know how to bake? No. I could... She stopped. Do you want me to teach you? I'm not a great baker, but I'm a decent one. My grandmother's shortbread recipe. You don't have to do that. I know, she said. You keep saying that, and I keep knowing it. Do you want to learn or not? He did. The shortbread was, objectively, not a success the first time. Adrian measured carefully. He was precise by nature, exact, the kind of person who read instructions thoroughly, and it still came out too dense. You overmixed it, Hannah said, poking one of the finished pieces with a fork. I followed the instructions exactly. Baking is not just instructions, she said. You have to feel when the dough is right. That's not a measurable standard. No, she agreed. It isn't. She picked up one of the pieces and ate it, made a face. It's not terrible, it's just chewy. Which shortbread shouldn't be? I'll try again. The cookies Danny's mom sent are probably better, she said. That's not the point. She looked at him with something that might have been curiosity. What is the point? Maya told someone I was learning to cook, he said. I'm going to learn to cook. Hannah looked at him for a moment. Then she said, Okay, next Saturday. We'll try again. Maya, eating one of the dense shortbread pieces with the diplomatic determination of a child who understood the situation, declared them good but different. Adrian told her she didn't have to eat them. She finished the piece. They're just different, she said again firmly. Not bad. Different. He sent her to brush her teeth and stood in Hannah's kitchen and felt not happy, exactly. Not the uncomplicated happiness people described in stories about healing. Something more like present. Aware that he was standing in this room, at this table, and that it was real. And that the feeling of having somewhere to be in the morning was something he hadn't had in longer than he'd admitted. He ran into Marcus on a video call in the second week of November. Marcus Chen was his COO and the only person inside Sterling Capital who knew the full picture of Adrian's life. Not the public version, not the professionally sanitized one. Marcus had been with him since year 3 of the company. He was calm and extremely competent and had approximately zero tolerance for what he called noble suffering. You look better, Marcus said, which was either reassuring or alarming depending on what he'd looked like before. The house needed work, Adrian said. I've been keeping busy. The Hendricks portfolio is requiring some attention, Marcus said. Nothing you need to step back in for, but I want you to know it's being managed. I know, Adrian said. I trust you. You're not checking your email. I am checking my email. You're reading it and not responding to it, which is different from not checking it. Marcus. I'm not criticizing, Marcus said, in the tone he used when he was about to say something direct and didn't want Adrian to dismiss it. You needed to stop. You stopped. I'm glad you stopped. I just want you to know that when you're ready to come back, partially, whatever that looks like, we're here. I know, Adrian said again. Are you eating? Marcus asked. Yes. Actually eating? Not. A neighbor has been feeding me, Adrian said. There was a beat. Marcus's expression shifted into something that might have been the beginning of a question. A neighbor, he repeated. A neighbor, Adrian confirmed. Her name is Hannah, and she's a bookkeeper, and she makes too much coffee every morning. I see, Marcus said in a tone that communicated significantly more than those 2 words. It's not, Adrian started. I didn't say anything, Marcus said. You had a tone. I have no tone. I'm just glad you're eating. He looked at his tablet. I'll send you the Hendricks summary. Just look at it when you have a chance. No rush. After the call, Adrian sat at the kitchen table for a while. The house was quiet. Maya was at school, and the street outside was its usual calm self, a car passing occasionally, leaves blowing. He thought about what Marcus had said. When you're ready to come back. He pulled up his email. He closed it again. He was not ready. The porch light. He noticed it the second week he was there and didn't mention it. Every evening, when darkness settled over Sycamore Lane, Hannah's porch light came on. Not the interior lights, those varied depending on whether she was home or in a different room or had already gone to bed. But the porch light was consistent. On at dusk, off sometime after he'd gone to sleep. He asked about it eventually, one morning in November when the coffee was particularly good, and Maya had already wandered into the living room with a book, and the conversation had gone quiet in a comfortable way. Your porch light, he said. You keep it on every evening. She looked up. Yeah. Why? She wrapped both hands around her mug. My grandmother used to do it, she said. She said it was for anyone who might be walking by and needed to know there was a house with a light on. She said you never know when someone needs to see that. A pause. I kept it up after she died. It felt like the right thing to keep doing. He looked at his coffee. I noticed it my first night, he said. Was it useful? She asked, and there was no teasing in it, just a genuine question. Yeah, he said. It was. She nodded, like this confirmed something she'd suspected. Then it's doing what it's supposed to, Chet. Thanksgiving arrived the way it always did in this town, with the smell of wood smoke and the local grocery store putting up decorations that were aggressively cheerful. Adrian had not planned for Thanksgiving. He had not made any particular arrangements, had no particular traditions to observe, and was planning to handle it like any other day with a better meal. Maya had other plans. "Are we going to Hannah's for Thanksgiving?" she asked on the Monday before. "We weren't invited," Adrian said. "Have you asked?" "Maya, you go there every morning," she said. "That's basically living there." "It is not basically living there." She looked at him with the expression that made him feel uncharitably like he was being managed by a very small accountant. "You should ask," she said. "It's rude not to ask." He did not ask. Instead, he mentioned casually on Tuesday morning that he was planning to cook Thanksgiving dinner and that it would probably be too much food for two people. Hannah, who had the ability to see through casual conversation like glass, looked at him over her coffee mug. "Are you asking me to Thanksgiving?" "I'm mentioning that there will be a surplus of food." "Adrian." "Yes," he said. "I'm asking you to Thanksgiving." She considered it for a long moment that he thought was going to end with a polite decline. She had, he'd learned, a careful relationship with accepting things. The same wariness about debt that showed up with the fence, with help, with anything that required reciprocity she couldn't immediately provide. "I'll bring the pie," she said finally. "You don't—" "I'm bringing a pie," she said. "Non-negotiable. What kind do you want?" "Apple," he said. "Apple it is. Suck." The dinner was imperfect in every way that a dinner could be imperfect and still be genuinely good. Adrian had overestimated his ability to manage a turkey alongside 4 side dishes, and there was a window of about 20 minutes in the afternoon when he was standing in his parents' kitchen in a moderate panic with a thermometer in one hand and a dish towel in the other, and absolutely no confidence in the thermometer's accuracy. Hannah arrived at 3 with the pie and took in the situation in approximately 4 seconds. She didn't take over. She just quietly stepped in beside him and started checking things in a methodical way while continuing the conversation they'd been having, and somehow the panic drained out of the kitchen without anyone formally acknowledging it. Maya sat on the counter, eating an unauthorized amount of cranberry sauce directly from the spoon and contributing commentary that was equal parts helpful and unhelpful. "The turkey smells weird," she said. "It's cooking," Adrian said. "It smells like that thing that happened with the chicken last month." Hannah pressed her lips together. "The chicken was fine," Adrian said. "We had cereal for dinner," Maya said to Hannah in a confiding tone. "Sometimes cereal for dinner is the right call," Hannah said, and Maya nodded with great seriousness. They ate at 6. The turkey was fine, the stuffing was better than fine. The pie was, by unanimous vote, the best thing on the table, a judgment Maya delivered formally and in writing, on a piece of paper she produced from her pocket. "I wrote it down," Maya explained, presenting the paper to Hannah. "So it's official." Hannah read it, folded it carefully, and put it in her sweater pocket. "I'm keeping this," she said. "I know," Maya said. "I made it for you to keep." They sat at the kitchen table long after the food was gone. The way people sit when leaving seems like too much effort, and the present moment is sufficient. Maya eventually curled up on the living room couch and went to sleep in the middle of a sentence, and the adults sat with their coffee and the last of the pie, and the quiet of a house that had food in it and light in the windows, and some version of a night that neither of them had planned exactly this way. "My grandmother would have liked this," Hannah said. "What makes you say that?" "She liked feeding people," Hannah said. "She thought it was the most direct form of affection. You can't argue with someone who's just cooked for you. It's harder to be closed off when someone's made you something." He thought about that. "She sounds like she understood people." "She understood most things," Hannah said. "She had a lot of time to figure things out." She looked at the empty pie plate. "She died in this house, in the back bedroom. I was with her." A pause. "I'm glad I was with her." He didn't say anything, because there was nothing to say to that. "Sorry," she said. "No," he said. "Don't apologize for that." She looked at him across the table. He looked back. "We're both carrying a lot of stuff around," she said. "Not an accusation, just an observation." "Yeah," he said. "We are." I'm not sure that's a bad thing, she said. Necessarily. I think sometimes people who've had to carry things can recognize it in other people. She looked down at her coffee. Or maybe that's just something I tell myself to make it make sense. It makes sense, he said. She nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Outside, the porch light was on. It was the last night of November, and there was frost forming at the edges of the window, and Adrian Sterling sat in the kitchen of his parents' house, where he'd grown up and eaten 1,000 dinners and grown into someone unrecognizable from the boy who'd lived here. Sat in that kitchen with a woman he'd known for 6 weeks and found, quietly and without announcement, that something he had not expected to find here was beginning to assemble itself out of the ordinary materials of morning coffee and shared meals and the specific warmth of a porch light on a cold street. He didn't name it. He was careful. But he was aware of it, the way you're aware of weather changing, before it's fully changed, before you can say what it's going to become, but after you can no longer pretend it isn't happening. Maya slept in the next room. Hannah finished her coffee. The frost kept forming on the glass. December arrived without ceremony. One morning, Adrian walked out to get the newspaper, a habit he'd picked up from his father, who had read an actual physical newspaper every morning of his adult life, and which Adrian had resumed here partly out of nostalgia and partly because looking at his phone first thing in the morning made him feel like he was already losing the day before it started, and found the front walk glazed with a thin layer of ice that hadn't been there the night before. He stepped carefully to the end of the driveway, picked up the paper, and stood there for a moment looking at the street. Sycamore Lane in December was a different thing than Sycamore Lane in October. The oak trees had given up the last of their leaves, and the street was bare and gray in the early light, with frost on the windshields of the parked cars and the lawns gone brown and flat. It should have felt bleak. It mostly felt quiet in a way he was beginning to appreciate rather than endure. Across the street, Hannah's porch light was still on. She always left it on overnight and turned it off sometime after 8, and the fact that it was still glowing meant she hadn't started her morning yet. He looked at it for a moment, then went inside to start the coffee himself. She knocked at his door at 8:15, which had not happened before. She was holding her own mug, already full, and she looked like someone who had been awake for a while and had decided the morning required company. "My heat went out," she said. He looked at her. "When?" "Sometime last night. I woke up at 6 and it was 53 degrees in my bedroom." She said this with the flat resignation of someone who had stopped being surprised by things going wrong. "Come in," he said. She came in, sat at his kitchen table, wrapped both hands around her mug. Maya was still asleep. The house was warm. Adrian had figured out the heating system in the second week, and while it was still eccentric, it worked. "I called the repair company," Hannah said. "They can come Thursday." "That's 4 days. I'm aware." "You can't stay in a 53-degree house for 4 days. It'll probably be fine during the day. It's just the nights." She drank her coffee. "I have extra blankets." He looked at her steadily. She looked back with the expression she used when she'd already made up her mind and was prepared to defend it. "I have 2 spare rooms," he said. "Adrian? Both empty. One has literally nothing in it. The other has some boxes I haven't unpacked." He picked up his coffee. "It's not a favor. It's 4 days in December and you have no heat." She sat with that for a moment. Outside, a car went by slowly on the iced road. "Maya would probably be fine with it," he offered. She narrowed her eyes. "Don't use Maya." "I'm not using Maya. I'm pointing out a relevant fact." "That's using Maya." "Hannah," she exhaled. 3 days. The repair company might be able to come Wednesday if there's a cancellation." 3 days, he agreed. She brought a bag, not a large one, just an overnight bag, the kind that said she was not planning to be comfortable about this, that she intended to treat it like a practical arrangement rather than anything that required acknowledgement. She put it in the spare room with the boxes, thanked him in a tone that meant we are not going to discuss this further, and went back to her own house to work. She came back for dinner because Maya asked her specifically, which she apparently found harder to decline than anything Adrian had said. It was those 3 days, a strange and clarifying experience. Having someone else in the house, not a guest exactly, not a roommate exactly, but someone moving through the same space with the specific casualness of a person who had given themselves permission to exist there changed the texture of the days in ways Adrian hadn't anticipated. She made coffee in his kitchen in the morning, earlier than he woke up, and left a mug for him on the counter with a post-it that said, "It's not extra. I made the right amount this time." She left her boots by the back door and her reading glasses on the kitchen table and a library book face down on the couch arm, which Maya carefully picked up and bookmarked with a piece of paper because you're not supposed to do that to the spine. "She's right," Adrian said. "I know she's right," Hannah said, accepting the bookmark with the expression of someone who had been doing something wrong for years and was mildly annoyed to be confronted with it. On the second evening, Maya came downstairs after her bath in her pajamas and climbed onto the couch next to Hannah, who was reading, and leaned against her with the unself-conscious confidence of a child who had decided a person was safe and was acting accordingly. Hannah looked down at her, lifted her arm so Maya could fit underneath it, kept reading. Adrian, standing in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel in his hand, watched this happen and then quietly went back to the dishes. The heater was fixed Wednesday. She went back to her house Wednesday evening, and Thursday morning the coffee at his table was from his own machine, and it was fine, objectively fine, and he noticed the absence in the way you notice a sound stopping rather than starting. Maya noticed too. She ate her cereal and didn't say anything, which with Maya sometimes meant more than saying something. "Hannah goes home," Adrian said. "I know," Maya said. "She lives across the street." "I know, Dad." She stirred her cereal. "It was just nice." He didn't have an answer for that, so he didn't give one. The porch light came on that evening, as it always did, and he stood at the kitchen window and looked at it for a moment before he pulled the curtain closed. It was still doing what it was supposed to do. He was still glad it was there. He fixed the gutter the following Saturday. He'd been thinking about it for 2 weeks, since Hannah had mentioned it in passing. The back gutter separating from the fascia board. It was the kind of thing that started as cosmetic and became structural if you left it long enough. And the rain in December had been consistent, and the separation was getting worse. He'd noticed it himself from across the back fence. He waited until she was out. She had a Saturday routine that involved the farmer's market 2 blocks over and took about 90 minutes, and got the ladder from his garage and did it. It was not complicated work. He was not a contractor, but he'd grown up in a house where his father had done most of the maintenance himself, and the practical knowledge had lodged somewhere in Adrian's hands, even if his adult life hadn't required it in years. He was putting the ladder away when she got back. She came through the side gate with her market bag and stopped when she saw him. She looked at the gutter, then at him, then at the gutter again. "You did the gutter," she said. "It was separating." "I know it was separating. I've been monitoring it." "It's fixed now," he said. "So you don't have to monitor it anymore." She set her bag down on the porch step. Her jaw had a particular set to it that he'd learned meant she was deciding between 2 things she could say, and the fact that she was taking a moment meant one of them was probably fairly direct. "I don't need you to fix my house," she said. "I know that," he said. "I'm serious, Adrian. I don't need someone to take care of things for me." "I know you don't need it," he said. "I just had the afternoon, and the gutter was going to be a problem by January, and I know how to fix gutters." "But that's not the point." "What's the point?" She picked up her bag. "The point is that I've been managing this house for 2 years on my own, and I don't want to get used to having help and then—" She stopped. The end of that sentence sat between them. He let it sit. "And then not have it," he finished quietly. She didn't confirm it. She didn't deny it. She looked at the gutter for a moment, and then at the ground. "I understand that," he said. "I'm not going anywhere, but I understand being careful." She looked at him. Something shifted in her expression, not warmth exactly, but the thing that exists before warmth, the decision that warmth is possible. "Don't do things to my house without asking," she said. "Please." "Fair," he said. "I should have asked." "Yes," she said. "You should have." She picked up her market bag again. "I got good apples. You want some?" He did. He started cooking in earnest around the middle of December, not because he'd suddenly developed a talent for it. He had not. But Maya's comment about the shortbread, different, not bad, had lodged in him somewhere, and there was something about the specific failure of the first attempt that made him want to try again, the same way a problem at work that resisted the first solution made him go home and think about it until he found a different angle. He texted Hannah, "What is a reasonable meal to learn to cook for someone with no experience?" She replied, "How no experience are we talking?" He thought about the chicken incident. "Significant." "Pasta," she replied. "Start with pasta." "It's forgiving. He made pasta. It was edible." Maya declared it good pasta, in a tone that was suspiciously close to the tone she'd used for the shortbread, but she ate all of it, which he chose to interpret as genuine approval. He tried it again the following week, and it was better. He made it for Hannah the week after that, and she ate it without diplomatic hedging, which he'd come to understand was her version of a compliment. "It's good," she said. "You don't have to say that." "I'm not saying it to be nice. If it wasn't good, I'd find a polite way to redirect." She twirled pasta on her fork. "This is actually good." "What's different from the first time I made it?" "You didn't overcook it," she said. "Pasta's like baking. There's a point where it's right, and if you go past it, you can't go back." "Baking is not like pasta," he said. "The principle is the same, timing and attention." She pointed her fork at him. "You're a better cook than you think. You just second-guess yourself." "I'm used to knowing whether something is working," he said. "And in cooking, you can't always tell until it's done," she said. "Correct. It's uncomfortable." She smiled. He noticed, as he had noticed before, that her smile changed her face in a way that seemed to catch him off guard every time, as though he somehow forgot between one smile and the next how it looked. Which was ridiculous. He was aware it was ridiculous. "Welcome to cooking," she said. "Where you commit and then find out." Maya, who had been quiet, looked up. "That's kind of like a lot of things," she said, with the philosophical air she adopted periodically. Adrian and Hannah both looked at her. "What?" she said. "Nothing," Hannah said. "You're right." Cale Brooks arrived on a Thursday evening in the second week of December. Hannah hadn't mentioned he was coming. Adrian learned about it because he saw the rental car in her driveway when he took Maya out for the school bus in the morning, and when he knocked to drop off the coffee he'd made too much of. Their arrangement had reversed itself lately, with Adrian occasionally making the extra pot. Hannah answered the door in a slightly distracted way that suggested she'd been in the middle of something. "My brother's here," she said. "I saw the car. I'll leave you to it." He handed over the thermos. "It's—" she started. "It's fine. Cale's good. He's just—" She seemed to decide not to finish that sentence. "Come for dinner tonight? Both of you. I'm making a real dinner." He almost said no. He could feel her slight tension and didn't want to complicate whatever family dynamic was at play. But she was already looking at him with an expression that said the invitation was genuine, so he said yes. Cale Brooks was 34, broad-shouldered, with Hannah's same brown eyes but a more openly evaluating quality to them. He was a structural engineer, he was in Denver, and he had driven his rental car from the airport in a direct line because he didn't like wasting time. These were all things Adrian inferred from approximately 15 minutes of conversation. Cale was not unfriendly, but he was direct, and his eyes were on Adrian more than was strictly socially necessary for the first half hour. Maya was indifferent to all of this. She found Cale's structural engineering interesting and asked him technical questions about bridges that he answered with visible surprise at their specificity. "She looked up bridges," Adrian said. "She's 6, Cale said. "She reads a lot," Adrian said. Cale looked at Maya, who was now explaining to Hannah something about suspension bridge cables, and the evaluating quality of his gaze shifted slightly into something more like reassessment. Dinner was good. Hannah had made roast chicken with roasted vegetables, the kind of meal that filled a kitchen with a smell that made even difficult evenings feel temporarily manageable. They ate, and the conversation moved between Cale's work, Maya's school, the neighborhood, the house. Adrian was careful without being guarded. He'd been in enough rooms with enough people who were deciding what to make of him to know how to do this, how to be present and genuine without laying out more information than the situation required. After dinner, while Hannah and Maya were in the kitchen doing dishes, Maya had appointed herself Hannah's official dish-drying assistant, and Hannah had accepted this without comment. Cale sat across from Adrian at the dining room table with his beer and said plainly, "So, what's your deal?" Adrian set down his own drink. "In what sense?" "In the sense that you showed up in October, you're at my sister's place constantly, and I'm not finding much about you when I look you up." Adrian met his eyes. "What did you search?" "Adrian Sterling, Maple Creek Road. Nothing local comes up. So either you just moved here, which Hannah said, or you've been very careful about not being easy to find." A pause. "In my experience, those two things sometimes go together." "They sometimes do," Adrian agreed. "Hannah doesn't have great history with people showing up and then leaving when it gets complicated," Cale said. "It wasn't aggressive, it was just factual. The way Hannah talked about practical things, as a fact, not a threat." "I know she's careful," Adrian said. "Do you know why?" "I know enough," Adrian said. "I'm not going to ask her for more than she wants to tell me." Cale looked at him. "What are your intentions here? Because Hannah acts like everything is fine all the time, and things are not always fine, and she doesn't let people in easily, and the fact that she's let you into her routine means something whether she said it or not." Adrian was quiet for a moment. This was the thing about people who loved someone without complication. They asked the direct questions that the person themselves might not ask. "I don't know exactly what this is," Adrian said. "I know I'm not here temporarily. I know Maya has become attached to her, and so have I, in whatever way that is. I know I'm not going to disappear when things get complicated, because things in my life have been complicated for years, and I'm still here." He picked up his drink. "I'm not trying to be someone who fixes things and then leaves, if that's what you're asking." Cale studied him. It was a long look, the kind meant to see whether the words and the person saying them matched. "Hannah said you lost your wife," Cale said. 4 years ago. "That's a lot to carry." "It is," Adrian said simply. Cale nodded slowly. He drank his beer. "She worries about Gerald when she travels," he said, with a sudden shift in topic that was apparently his version of having concluded something. "The fish." "Yeah, the fish." He almost smiled. "She named a fish Gerald. That tells you something about her." "I think it tells you she wanted a name that fit the fish specifically," Adrian said. Cale did smile then, briefly. "Yeah," he said. "That's exactly it." They sat there for a minute with the sounds of Maya and Hannah in the kitchen drifting through. Maya explaining something, Hannah laughing at it, the clink of dishes. "She's been alone in that house for 2 years, Cale said quietly. "She doesn't complain about it. But I know her." "I know," Adrian said. "Don't make it worse," Cale said. Not unkindly. "I won't," Adrian said. He meant it. Though Cale left Saturday morning. Before he got in the rental car, he shook Adrian's hand and said, "Good meeting you," in a tone that was more layered than the words. He hugged Hannah for a long time on the porch, said something quietly into her hair that made her close her eyes, and then drove away. Hannah watched the car go. Adrian was on his porch. He didn't say anything. She looked over at him after a moment, and there was something exposed in her face. Not grief exactly, but the specific feeling of watching someone you love drive away. "He worries," she said. "He loves you," Adrian said. She looked back down the now empty street. "Yeah," she said. "He does." A pause. "Come have coffee?" They went in. What? Christmas was 10 days away, and Adrian had done approximately nothing to prepare for it. This was not unusual. In the years after Lydia died, Christmas had been something to manage rather than something to experience. Gifts sourced by Priya, decorations handled by whoever was working the penthouse apartment that year. Maya's celebration structured by a schedule rather than feeling. He'd done the right things. He'd made sure Maya had what she needed. But he'd been going through motions he didn't fully inhabit. This year was different, and he couldn't entirely explain why, except that Maya had started talking about Christmas with a specificity and enthusiasm she hadn't shown in previous years, and he suspected the source was Hannah. "Hannah said she decorates on the 15th, Maya informed him. "Does she?" "She said her grandmother had a rule about it. 15th is the earliest, December 26th it comes down. No exceptions." "Interesting rule." "We should have rules," Maya said. "We don't have rules about Christmas." He thought about the previous years, about Priya booking a tree delivery, about the decorations he hadn't chosen. What rules would you want? Maya thought about this with great seriousness. We pick the tree ourselves, she said, not delivered. We go get it. Okay. And we decorate together, not separately. He knew she meant something specific by that, something about the years when he'd been absent from his own house in ways that had nothing to do with physical location. And we keep the porch light on. He looked at her. We don't have a porch light habit. We should start one, she said. Hannah has one. It's nice. He thought about saying something about traditions requiring history before they were traditions. He didn't say it. We can start one, he said. They picked the tree on the 16th. Adrian drove them to a farm 20 minutes outside of town, and Maya walked between the rows of trees with the seriousness of a diplomat assessing candidates for a summit. She rejected 4 trees for reasons she explained precisely, and then found the 5th, a Fraser fir, a little lopsided on one side, and announced that it was the one. It's not perfectly shaped, Adrian said. I know, she said. That's why it needs us. He looked at the tree. Okay, he said. They brought the tree home. Hannah saw them pulling into the driveway and came out. You got a tree, she said. It's a little lopsided, Maya said, but that's why it needs us. Hannah looked at the tree and then at Adrian with an expression that was doing several things at once. Do you have ornaments? Adrian and Maya looked at each other. No, Maya said. Hannah nodded slowly. Come over tomorrow, she said. My grandmother had boxes of them. I always use a fraction because it's just me, but I have enough for 2 trees if... She stopped. If you want. Yes, Maya said immediately. They spent the better part of a Sunday afternoon at Hannah's kitchen table going through boxes of ornaments that had been accumulated over decades, some fragile and faded, some painted by hands that had been a child's once and were now gone. Hannah told the stories behind the ones she knew, which was most of them. Maya listened with a quality of attention that she usually reserved for books. This one my grandmother got at a flea market in 1987, Hannah said, holding up a small brass sleigh. She said she overpaid for it and then kept it for 30 years, so she got her money's worth eventually. That's good math, Maya said. She was good at that kind of math, Hannah said. Adrian watched them. He was holding a cardboard box and had been holding it for several minutes without doing anything with it, which neither of them had pointed out. He hadn't decorated a tree with anyone since Lydia. He hadn't really thought about that until he was standing in Hannah's living room with a box of someone else's family's ornaments and the smell of pine coming from both their houses. And Maya was saying something about the brass sleigh, and Hannah was laughing at it, and the afternoon was gray and cold outside and warm in here. He put the box down and picked up an ornament, a simple glass ball, deep blue, the kind that caught light and scattered it. He put it in the box for their tree. Good choice, Hannah said without looking up. He picked up another one. December moved the way December moves when you've stopped dreading it, faster than expected, with moments that accumulated rather than scattered. Adrian found himself tracking them without meaning to. The evening Maya taught Hannah a card game she'd invented herself and refused to explain the rules of until they were already playing. The morning he and Hannah stood in his kitchen watching the first real snow of winter come down, both of them with coffee, not talking, just watching. The afternoon he drove her to the hardware store to look at weatherproofing supplies, and they spent 45 minutes in an aisle debating the merits of 2 products that cost $11 total, which she pointed out afterward was a significant time investment. We were thorough, he said. We were ridiculous, she said. But the weatherproofing will be good. It would be good. He'd applied it the following Saturday while she was at the farmer's market, and he'd asked first, which she appreciated enough to make lunch in response. He talked to Marcus in the middle of the month, a longer call than the ones before. The Hendricks situation had resolved cleanly, and there were 2 new projects coming in the new year that required attention. Adrian was present in the call in a way he hadn't been in October. Not ready to go back, not fully, but able to engage with the specifics of the business in a way that felt functional rather than forced. You sound better, Marcus said again. You keep saying that. You keep getting better, Marcus said. What's the situation with the neighbor? Adrian looked at the ceiling. The neighbor is a neighbor. Right, Marcus said in the tone. She's a friend, Marcus. I didn't say anything. You had the tone again. I genuinely don't have a tone. I'm a very neutral person. You're the least neutral person I've ever employed. Fair, Marcus said. Is she someone you're being honest with? About who you are? What you... Not entirely, Adrian said. He said it plainly, without defense. Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's a thing to watch, he said. Not right now, but eventually. I know, Adrian said. People don't usually respond well to finding out they've been... I know, Marcus. Okay, Marcus said. I'll drop it. He did. They talked for another 20 minutes about the business. After the call, Adrian sat at the kitchen table and thought about what Marcus had said, which was not new information. He'd thought about it before, but which had a different weight in December than it had in October. He hadn't lied to Hannah. He'd said he'd been working, that he needed to step away from his life, that he had a business. All of that was true. He'd just declined to fill in the specific details, the size of the business, the name of it, the number that appeared in financial publications next to his name. He told himself the timing wasn't right. He told himself it would complicate things. Both of those things were true. Neither of them was the whole reason. The whole reason was simpler and harder to say. Hannah treated him like a person, and he wanted to preserve that for a little longer. The way she handed him coffee and asked him direct questions and told him when he was wrong about something and made no accommodation for the specific weight of who he was in the world outside this street. He was aware that was unfair to her. He hadn't figured out how to fix it yet. Woke. The evening 3 days before Christmas, Maya got sick. Not seriously. A winter cold that showed up fast, the way they do with kids, turning her from fine at dinner to feverish and miserable by 9 o'clock. Adrian got the thermometer, got the children's fever medication, got her settled with blankets and a glass of water and her favorite stuffed rabbit, which had a name he could never remember and she had never judged him for. It was the way illness worked, the way it always does. Inconveniently, in the evening when everything is closed. He wasn't worried. The fever was low enough, the symptoms were ordinary, the medication would work. He sat in the chair beside her bed and waited for the medication to take effect and felt the specific texture of parenthood alone, the way you needed to remain calm and present and functional at precisely the moments when the loneliness was most vivid. His phone lit up. Hannah, saw your lights on late. Everything okay? He thought about saying yes, fine, just a sick kid. He typed, Maya's got a cold. Nothing serious, just the late night of it. 3 minutes later, there was a knock at his back door. Hannah was on the porch with a container of broth. Actual broth. Not the carton kind, the kind that takes hours and smells right. And a small bag with crackers and ginger tea. You didn't have to, he said. I know, she said. I had leftover broth from last week. Can I see her? He let her in. She went upstairs quietly, knocked on Maya's open door and put her head in. Maya, foggy with fever, looked up. Hannah, she said. Hey, sick, Hannah said. I brought soup. I don't feel good, Maya said. I know, Hannah said. That's why I brought soup. She came in and felt Maya's forehead the way people who've taken care of sick people before do it. Not the back of the hand, but flat palm, and she held it there for a second and then nodded to herself. You're going to be fine. It's just a cold. Your body is working on it. It's taking a long time, Maya said. It just started, Hannah said. Give it a night. She stayed for an hour. Not doing anything dramatic, just being present, helping Adrian reheat the broth, sitting on the edge of Maya's bed while Maya drifted in and out of sleep and occasionally said something that made no sense because the fever was making her dreams bleed into her waking. Hannah just listened and responded gently to whatever Maya said, the same way she did most things, without fuss, without performance. Maya was asleep by 10. Adrian walked Hannah back downstairs. You didn't have to stay, he said. You said it already. She was putting on her coat. Sick kids at night are hard alone. That's just a fact. You've had experience. I took care of my mom when she was sick, she said. It's different with a parent than with a kid, but nights are hard. You don't want to be the only person in the house making the decisions. She pulled on her gloves. She's fine. She'll be better by morning. She was right. Maya woke up the next morning with a lower temperature and the specific hunger of someone whose body had won its battle and wanted a reward. She ate 2 pieces of toast and asked if Hannah was coming for Christmas. "We haven't asked her," Adrian said. Maya gave him the accountant look. He went across the street that morning with his coffee thermos, knocked on Hannah's door, and when she opened it, he said without preamble, "Christmas dinner. Christmas Eve, actually. I'd like to cook. You should come." She looked at him for a moment, then stepped back to let him in. "What are you making?" she said. "I haven't decided." "You should decide before you invite people." "I'm inviting you first," he said, "then deciding, so you can give input." She sat down at her kitchen table. Outside, the December morning was pale gray and still. "Roast beef," she said. "It's easy and it's forgiving and it's actually good if you don't rush it." "Okay," he said. "I'll bring the pie," she said. "Don't argue about the pie." "I wasn't going to." She looked at him across the table. "Adrian," she said. "Yeah." "Merry Christmas," she said. Not with any particular ceremony, just as a fact, as something she meant. He looked at her across the table in her grandmother's kitchen, with Gerald swimming his small circles in the bowl by the window, and the frost on the glass outside, and the smell of her coffee. "Merry Christmas," he said. It was the first time in 4 years he'd said it and felt the words land correctly. Christmas Eve dinner was not a disaster, which Adrian considered a qualified success. The roast beef had required 3 consultations with Hannah by text, 1 emergency phone call when he couldn't find the meat thermometer, and a 20-minute window around 4 in the afternoon when he was genuinely uncertain whether he'd ruined it. He hadn't. Came out medium, the way it was supposed to, and when he sliced it at the kitchen counter, Hannah looked at it and said, "That's actually good," in the specific tone she reserved for things that genuinely surprised her. "You sound surprised," he said. "I'm not surprised," she said. "I'm impressed. There's a difference." Maya had decorated the table herself, with a seriousness of purpose that involved 3 rearrangements before she was satisfied. She'd made place cards, her name, Adrian's name, Hannah's name, and a small one that said Gerald, in spirit, that she'd placed at the center of the table next to the small arrangement of pine branches she'd collected from the yard. Hannah saw the Gerald card and looked at Maya without speaking for a moment. "He would have wanted to be here," Maya said very seriously. "I think he's fine at home," Hannah said, "but he's alone on Christmas." "Fish don't experience Christmas," Adrian said. Maya looked at him with an expression that said she was choosing not to argue this point, but had not conceded it. They ate. The roast was good. The pie was excellent, because Hannah's pie was always excellent, and Maya said so with the formal precision she'd been using to evaluate food since she was 4 years old. Outside, the street was quiet and cold. Someone down the block had put up lights on their oak tree, and they glimmered through the kitchen window in the particular soft way of lights seen through cold glass. It was the kind of evening that asked nothing of the people in it. That was, Adrian had come to understand, a rarer thing than most people appreciated. After dinner, Maya crashed predictably on the couch, full of roast beef and pie, and the specific exhaustion of a child who'd held herself at high alert all day in anticipation of something. And the adults sat at the kitchen table with wine and the comfortable silence of people who'd been doing this long enough not to need noise to fill the space. "This was good," Hannah said. "It was," he agreed. She turned her wine glass slowly in her hands. "Last Christmas I ate cereal," she said, "at 8 o'clock, by myself. Gerald was there, technically. Was he interactive?" "Not especially." She looked at the table. I'm not telling you that for sympathy. I just want to say that this is better, that's all." He looked at her. She was looking at the table still, and her expression had the quality it sometimes got when she'd said more than she'd planned to. Not regret exactly, just an awareness that she'd gone past a line she usually maintained. "This is better," he said, "by a significant margin." She looked up. "Yeah," she said. They let that sit for a while. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You can always ask." "What do you actually do, work-wise?" She said it carefully, in a way that suggested she'd been sitting on the question for a while. You said you have a business. You've taken a leave. But you're careful about it, and I've been careful about asking, and we've been neighbors for 3 months, and I still don't actually know. He looked at his wine. He thought about what he'd said to himself in November. I want to preserve this a little longer, and recognized that what had felt like a reasonable delay then had become, over time, something closer to avoidance. It's finance, he said. Investment and capital management. I built it from the ground up, starting when I was 24. How big is it? She asked. He was quiet for a moment. Significant, he said. She looked at him. He could see her processing that, the specific weight of the word, the way he'd said it. Significant like it's your whole life significant? Or significant like both, he said. She sat with that. He watched her face work through it. The recalibration that happened when you learned something about a person that required you to adjust the map you'd been using. Okay, she said finally. Okay, he said. I have more questions, she said. But okay for tonight. She drank her wine. You're not a contractor. No. Or a retired contractor. Definitely not. And the leave of absence isn't because business is slow. No. She nodded slowly. I thought there was something, she said. I didn't know what, but you have a quality sometimes, like you're used to rooms being different when you walk into them. I couldn't figure out what to do with it. He looked at her. You notice that. I notice most things, she said simply. I just don't always say them. Maya shifted on the couch in the other room, resettled, went back to breathing slow and deep. The lights on the oak tree outside caught a draft and moved slightly. There's more, he said. I'll tell you the rest, not tonight, but I will. She held his eyes. I know, she said, when you're ready. She said it without any particular pressure, the same way she said most things that mattered, as though the truth of it was self-evident and didn't require decoration. And that specific quality, the steadiness of it, was what made the weight of what he was still carrying feel, for the first time, like something he might eventually be able to put down. He didn't say any of that. He picked up his wine and she picked up hers, and they sat in his parents' kitchen on Christmas Eve while Maya slept in the next room and the street outside was quiet and cold and lit. January came in hard. 3 days of ice and wind that kept the street empty and everyone inside. Adrian worked from home in a real way for the first time. Actual working hours, actual involvement with Marcus and the team, actual decisions made rather than just reviewed. The leave of absence was still in effect in the formal sense, but the pull of the business had gotten harder to ignore, and he was finding that partial engagement was both more sustainable than full withdrawal and more honest than pretending he could stay disconnected indefinitely. He told Hannah about this over coffee on a Thursday morning when the ice had finally given way to plain cold. So you're going back? She asked. Not fully, he said. Not yet, but I can't stay entirely out of it. There are people whose livelihoods depend on decisions I make. I can't just step back from that indefinitely. She looked at him. Did you think you could? He'd thought about this. I thought I needed to. I still think I needed to, but needing it and being able to sustain it indefinitely are different things. So what does partial engagement look like? A few hours a day, video calls, being reachable. He wrapped his hands around his mug. It's better than all or nothing. I was all or nothing before. It wasn't working. What wasn't working? She asked. He was quiet for a moment. This was the edge of a conversation he'd been approaching gradually for weeks. The one about Lydia, about the years after, about the specific way he'd handled grief by burying himself so completely in the business that there was no space left to feel it, and also no space left for anything else. For Maya, for himself, for the ordinary texture of a life. I lost myself in it, he said, after my wife died. I worked because working meant I didn't have to be anywhere else. He looked at his coffee. It was effective as a strategy in the short term. In the long term, I looked up and my daughter was 2 years older, and I'd been present in the room but not actually there. And I didn't know how to fix that without stopping completely. Hannah was quiet. She wasn't filling the silence with reassurance, which he'd come to understand was one of her specific qualities. She let things land before she responded. "Is that why you came back here?" she said. "Part of it," he said. "The other part is that I was starting to not recognize myself. And this was the last place I'd lived as someone I still recognized." She looked at him carefully. "Do you recognize yourself now?" He thought about it. "More," he said. "That's not nothing," she said. "No," he agreed. "It's not." It was the 12th of January when the explosion happened. Not in the house, not close. A transformer station 2 streets over, the kind of failure that sent a percussive boom through the neighborhood and took out the power on a 4-block radius. Adrian was in the backyard checking on the fence repair he'd done in November. One of the posts had shifted in the ice when it happened. The sound came without warning, and it was not a small sound. It was the kind of sound that went through the body before the brain caught up with it, the kind that had a physical impact even at distance. He heard it and dropped. Not consciously. His body made the decision before his mind engaged, and he was on one knee in the frozen grass with his hands braced before he'd processed what he was doing. Then his brain caught up. Transformer. Electrical. Not that. But the knowledge didn't reach the place the knowledge was needed. He stayed on one knee in the grass with his pulse doing something violent in his chest and his hands braced against the ground and the specific gray quality of the January afternoon pressing down on him. His breathing had gone wrong. He knew it had gone wrong because he'd been here before. This exact physiological state, this exact removal from the present moment, and he knew what it was, and knowing what it was did not make it stop. He was back in the parking garage. He was back in the moment they'd taken him. He was back in the weeks after, in the months after, in the hotel room in the middle of a conference trip where he'd heard a car backfire from 20 floors up and ended up sitting on the bathroom floor for 40 minutes. He knew he was in a backyard in January. He knew that. He stayed where he was. He didn't know how long it was before he heard the gate. Probably not long. It felt long. "Adrian," Hannah's voice. From the gate, not close, not crowding him. He didn't look up. "I heard it," she said. "The transformer blew. Power's out on the block." A pause. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head. He was aware of how this looked. He was aware and couldn't do anything about it. She didn't come closer. He heard her sit down on the back step, the creak of it, and then nothing except the ambient quiet of the neighborhood reordering itself after the noise. She didn't say anything. She didn't ask him what was wrong. She didn't offer reassurance. She just stayed. Close enough to be present, far enough to give him the air he needed. His breathing started to come back, slower. The gray quality of the afternoon resolved back into just afternoon, January, the fence, the grass, his own hands on the cold ground. He sat back, not standing yet, just back, no longer braced. "Sorry," he said. "Don't apologize," she said. From the step. "I should—" He stopped. He was cold. He hadn't realized how cold until now. That's not a normal reaction to a transformer blowing. "No," she said. "It's not." He looked up. She was sitting on the back step with her arms around her knees, and she was looking at him with an expression he hadn't seen from her before. Not pity, not alarm, not the careful management of someone trying to handle a situation. Something quieter and more direct. "You don't have to tell me," she said. He pushed himself to his feet. His knee complained. He'd hit it on the frozen ground when he went down. He brushed the dirt and ice off his jeans and went and sat on the step beside her. They sat there for a while. 2 doors down, he could hear someone on the phone with the power company. Further away, a dog was barking at the disturbance. The sky was the flat white of winter. "When I was 30, he said, "I was taken." She didn't move. "Not long, 48 hours. He looked at the yard. They wanted the company. There'd been a hostile acquisition bid I'd blocked. People who didn't like how I'd blocked it. It was about money, the way most things are, when you look at the actual core of them. He paused. "My wife was with me." She wasn't supposed to be. She was supposed to be in a different car. He stopped. He hadn't said this out loud and he didn't know. He'd said the facts to lawyers, to law enforcement, to the therapist he'd seen for 14 months after, and then stopped seeing when he thought he'd processed it sufficiently. He'd never said it in a backyard to someone who looked at him the way Hannah was looking at him. She died, he said. In the garage before they even... It was fast. She died before they got us out of the car. He pressed his hands flat against his thighs. She didn't know what was happening, or I don't think she did. I choose to believe that. Hannah's hand came down on his, not gripping it, just placed there, present. I got out, he said. The company's security team tracked the location within 36 hours. I came out and she didn't. He exhaled. Maya was 2, I was 30, and I built the next 4 years out of work because it was the only material I had that I knew how to shape. He stopped talking. The yard was quiet. The sound, Hannah said. That's what it does. It's specific sounds, he said. Specific situations. It's better than it was. In the first year I had a hard time in parking garages, certain cars. It's mostly managed now. But loud, sudden. It doesn't need an explanation, she said. You don't have to justify it. I know, he said. I'm still trying not to. She understood that. He could tell she understood that. The specific work of trying not to explain yourself when explaining yourself is what you've always done in situations that felt precarious. Does Maya know any of it? Hannah asked. Not yet, he said. She knows her mother died. She knows I've said it was an accident. She's 6. I'll tell her more when she's old enough to carry it. That's a hard thing to carry for her, Hannah said. Yes, he said. It is. They sat there for another few minutes. The cold was getting serious now, but neither of them made a move to go in. I have a thermos of coffee inside, she said, if you want to come over. He looked at her. Her hand was still on his. She hadn't moved it. Yeah, he said. Okay. The power came back on at 9 that evening. By then, they were in Hannah's living room with the thermos long empty and candles lit because she had 12 of them distributed around the house, a habit she'd inherited from her grandmother who had distrusted the power grid generally. Maya had come over at dusk, when the dark made the powerless house unsettling, and was asleep on Hannah's couch again under the quilt that seemed to have become specifically Maya's quilt, a fact that Hannah had not commented on, and Maya had clearly decided was simply true. They were talking about something else by then, not the garage, not Lydia, the way a conversation drifts after it's done what it needed to do. Hannah was telling him about a job she'd had at 22, her first year out of the city community college, working accounts for a restaurant that was catastrophically mismanaged and went under inside 8 months. I didn't realize until later how much I'd learned from watching everything go wrong, she said. I saw every possible mistake you could make with small business finances in 8 months. It was a very efficient education. That's an optimistic way to frame losing your job, he said. I spent 2 weeks not being optimistic about it, she said. And then I needed a new job, so practical. Extremely. She pulled her knees up. My mom got sick about 6 months after that. So I was job hunting while also... She stopped. It was a lot happening at once. How old were you? 22, she said. 23 by the time she died. It was about 14 months. He looked at her. She said it the same way she said most hard things, directly, without asking for a particular response. I moved back in with her, Hannah said, when she got sick. I'd had a roommate situation in the city, and I ended it, moved back. Some of the people I knew at the time thought it was, I don't know, excessive, or that I was being martyrish about it. Were you? She thought about it. No, she said. She was my mom. There wasn't really a question. She picked up her empty coffee cup, looked at it, set it down. My grandmother came and stayed some of the time. She was good at that. Staying. You mentioned that before, he said. That she was the one who stayed. It's the thing I think about most when I think about her, Hannah said. Not any specific thing she did or said, just that quality of staying, not leaving when things got hard. He thought about Cale's voice in the dining room. Don't make it worse. He thought about what he'd said back. I'm not going to disappear when things get complicated. He'd meant it. He was aware, tonight especially, that meaning something and being certain you could execute it were different things. He was aware that he had damage that showed up in unpredictable ways, and that Hannah now knew more of the shape of it than almost anyone. And he was aware that the knowledge of the damage and the decision to be present with it anyway was exactly the kind of staying that he'd never asked anyone to do. I landed on the ground, he said. She looked at him. In the backyard, he said, when the transformer blew. I went down before I even knew I was going down, and then I knew it was a transformer and I couldn't tell my body that, not right away. That's how it works, she said. I know how it works, he said. I spent a year in therapy after. I know the mechanism. He looked at his hands. It's different to be in it than to know the mechanism. Yeah, she said. I'd imagine. I'm not, he stopped. I don't want to be someone you have to manage, he said. I'm not looking for someone to... I have a therapist I can call back if I need to. I've been handling this for 4 years and I know how to handle it. Today was specific. I know, she said. I wasn't managing you. I know you weren't. I was just sitting in a backyard with someone She paused. Someone I care about. And waiting until he was ready. He looked at her. She looked back without any particular self-consciousness. She'd said it plainly, the way she said everything, as a fact, not a performance. Hannah, you don't have to say anything, she said. I'm not asking you to. She exhaled slowly. I'm saying I was there because I wanted to be there, not because I thought you needed handling. He was quiet for a moment. Outside, the street was dark, except for the houses that had gotten their power back, and Hannah's porch light had come back on with the electricity and was visible through the curtain. I care about you too, he said, for whatever that's worth right now, with everything it comes with. It comes with a lot, she said. It does, he agreed. Mine comes with things too, she said. I'm not exactly uncomplicated. You seem pretty uncomplicated, he said. She laughed, short and a little surprised. I seem uncomplicated because I deal with my complications quietly. That's different from not having them. He almost smiled. Fair point. Don't idealize me, she said. It was said lightly, but she meant it. I've been idealized before and it always ends the same way. How does it end? With the person being disappointed that I'm just this, she said, that I'm not softer or more forgiving or more, she searched for the word, more accommodating of other people's decisions about my life. I have opinions about my own life. Sometimes people find that inconvenient. I've noticed, he said. I find it clarifying. She looked at him. You tell me when I've done something wrong, he said. The gutter. The way I went quiet after Thanksgiving. I appreciate it. I don't appreciate a lot of things, but I appreciate that. She studied him for a moment. Okay, she said. Okay? Okay, she said. I just wanted to say it. I wanted you to know what you're actually dealing with. I know what I'm dealing with, he said. Good, she said. Otam. 2 weeks into January, Cale called. Not Hannah's phone. Adrian's. He'd gotten the number somehow. Probably asked Hannah for it. Probably under some pretext, Adrian suspected. And the call came on a Sunday afternoon when Maya was in the backyard and Adrian was in the kitchen doing the slow, imperfect work of learning to make soup. Sterling, Cale said when he picked up. Cale, Adrian said. Hannah told me what happened, Cale said. With the transformer. Adrian put down the spoon. He wasn't angry, he might have been, a few months ago. She told you because she was worried, he said. She told me because she's my sister, and I asked how she was doing, and she's not great at lying by omission, Cale said. She didn't give me details. She told me you'd had a hard moment, and she'd stayed. A pause. She also told me you were honest with her about what happened, about your wife. Yes, Adrian said. That's... Cale stopped. I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it straight. Go ahead. Can you actually build something with her? Cale said. Not, I'm not talking about intentions. I know you have good intentions. I'm talking about whether you're in a place where it's possible, because you've been through something serious and grief doesn't run on anyone else's schedule. And she's had enough of being the person who holds things together for other people. I love her, but she will do that. She'll be the strong one and she'll hold things together and she won't ask for what she needs. And 6 months from now, she'll be depleted and telling me she's fine. Adrian was quiet for a moment. He thought about what Hannah had said on Christmas Eve. Mine comes with things too. He thought about the way she'd sat on the back step with her hand on his and not asked him to explain himself. I know what you're describing, he said. I've seen it in her. And I'm not looking for someone to hold me together, Adrian said. That's not what this is. I've been handling myself for 4 years. I'll keep handling myself. What I want with Hannah is I want a partner, someone beside me. Not in front of me, not holding the weight for me. Beside. He paused. I know that's easier to say than to do. I know I have work still to do. I'm not telling you I'm fixed. I'm telling you that I know the difference between needing to be carried and wanting to walk with someone. Cale was quiet for a long moment. She said something like that, he said, when I pushed her on it. She said you were the first person in a long time who seemed to know what they actually wanted. I don't always know, Adrian said, but I know that. Okay, Cale said. Okay, Adrian said. Yeah, Cale said. Okay. He paused. I'm in Denver. I can be there in 4 hours if I need to be. I know, Adrian said. I'm not threatening you, Cale said. I'm just saying, 4 hours. Noted, Adrian said. He could hear Cale deciding whether there was anything else to say. There wasn't, apparently. Good soup recipe if you want it, Cale said. Our mom's chicken soup. Hannah doesn't make it because it's too much for one person. But if you've got 2 households, send it, Adrian said. Cale sent it. Adrian spent the rest of the afternoon with it, making adjustments, making mistakes, making it again. It was a Sunday afternoon in January, and the soup was slow and it didn't come out quite right the first time, but it didn't need to. He told Hannah the rest of it at the end of January. Not dramatically. There was no particular moment that demanded it. He'd made the soup, Cale's mother's recipe, his second attempt, which was better, and they were eating it at his kitchen table, and Maya was explaining to them both a theory she'd developed about the migratory patterns of birds she'd read about in a library book. And the evening was plain and warm and ordinary in all the ways that had come to matter to him. And when Maya went to brush her teeth, and they were sitting with the last of the soup in the quiet of the house, he said, I should tell you the rest of what I told you at Christmas. Hannah wrapped her hands around her mug. Okay, she said. Sterling Capital, he said. That's the company. I'm not going to tell you a number because numbers in that range don't mean anything concrete. They're just large. But I'm in the financial publications. I have been for several years. If you search my name, you'll find it. She looked at him steadily. The reason I didn't, he started. I know why, she said. He looked at her. Because it changes things, she said. When people know, the way they talk to you, the things they ask for, the way they calculate what you owe them or what they're owed. She said it without bitterness, just as an observation. I figured there was something. I just didn't know the scale. Does it change anything? He asked. She was quiet for a moment. He let her be quiet. This was, he understood, a real question that deserved real consideration rather than an instant reassurance. It explained some things, she said finally. The quality of how you carry yourself. The specific way you're careful about being ordinary. The way you go very still when someone tries to take care of you. She looked at the table. It doesn't change what this is. If that's what you're asking. That's what I was asking, he said. You're still the person who replaced my fence post without asking and made bad shortbread and spent 45 minutes in a hardware aisle arguing about weatherproofing, she said. That doesn't... She stopped. Money is a fact. It's not a personality. He looked at her across the table. My grandmother had a neighbor once, Hannah said, who won a significant amount in the state lottery, and everyone waited for her to change. And she bought some nicer shoes and a better car, but she was still herself. She was still the person who brought soup when you were sick and remembered your birthday and called you out when you were being an idiot. Hannah's expression softened slightly. Being the kind of person you are is not contingent on the number in your account. He was quiet. You're not what I expected, he said. When I moved here, I wasn't expecting this. What were you expecting? I wasn't expecting anything, he said. That's the point. I wasn't expecting anything, and then a woman across the street kept her porch light on and made too much coffee, and now I'm eating chicken soup from her brother's recipe in my mother's kitchen. Hannah almost smiled. Life is strange, she said. Yeah, he said. It is. Maya came back downstairs in her pajamas and climbed onto Adrian's lap the way she still did sometimes. Too old for it technically, but he never said so, and put her head back against his chest and said, Is Hannah staying for breakfast tomorrow? I live across the street, Hannah said. That's not an answer, Maya said. Adrian and Hannah looked at each other over Maya's head. Hannah's expression said, I am not answering this question. Adrian's expression said, I know. Maya appeared to take the silence as a sufficient answer because she closed her eyes with the satisfaction of someone who had made her point and was prepared to sleep on it. Outside, the porch light across the street was on. The January night was cold and clear. The street was quiet. And in the kitchen of the old Whitmore house on Sycamore Lane, 3 people sat at a table that had known better years and harder years and was now simply the surface where someone had left their coffee mug and a library book and a child's drawing of what she still called the whole neighborhood family. It was a beginning, not a conclusion. Adrian knew that. There were things still unresolved, the full truth of his life that Hannah was still only beginning to understand, the grief he carried that still showed up without announcement, the specific courage required to choose something real after everything that had gone wrong before. But the soup was warm, and the kitchen was lit, and across the street the porch light was on, as it always was, because someone had decided years ago that it was a simple act of decency to make sure there was light for anyone who might be passing by and needed to see it. He had needed to see it. He still did. February arrived the way it always does in small towns. Quietly, without the drama of January's cold or the promise of March's thaw, just a gray, persistent settling that made people stay inside and think more than was necessarily good for them. Adrian felt it. He'd known the anniversary was coming the way you know about a weather system before it arrives, not with specific information, but with a change in pressure, a quality of dread that had nothing to do with the present moment and everything to do with the particular date circled on no calendar he owned but marked nonetheless in some part of him that kept its own accounting. February 14th. Lydia had died on Valentine's Day, which was the kind of cruel coincidence that the universe occasionally produced without apology. 4 years ago. The parking garage, the sound of the car, the 48 hours that followed, he'd gone over it enough times in therapy that the sequence of events was no longer the problem. The problem was more diffuse than that. The problem was the specific texture of a date, the way it changed the air around it for a week before and a week after. He'd handled the previous anniversaries by working. Last year, he'd been in Singapore for a conference that coincidentally fell on the 13th through the 15th, and he'd spent the 14th in back-to-back meetings from 7 in the morning until 10 at night, and had drunk half a bottle of scotch afterward in his hotel room, which was not a strategy he'd recommend, but which had gotten him through the night. This year, he had no conference. He had a quiet street and a daughter and a woman across the road with a porch light, and none of those things were things he could schedule around. He went quiet in the first week of February, not dramatically, not in a way that would have been obvious to someone who didn't know him. He still made coffee in the mornings, still took Maya to school, still answered Marcus's calls, and dealt with the business problems that arrived with the reliable frequency of January's new fiscal year. But he stopped crossing the street in the mornings. He texted instead of calling. He answered Hannah's messages with replies that were technically complete and emotionally distant in the specific way of someone who is managing himself very carefully and keeping the management internal. Hannah noticed. Of course she noticed. She didn't push. He was aware she didn't push, and he was aware that the not pushing was a choice she was making, an active thing rather than an absence of response. She texted him normally. She sent Maya a book she'd found at the farmer's market, a field guide to local birds because Maya had been reading about migration, with a note that said for the ongoing research. She left a container of the leftover vegetable soup on his porch on a Tuesday evening with no accompanying message. He stood at the window and watched her cross back to her house after leaving it, her coat pulled around her against the cold, and felt the particular weight of being known well enough to be given exactly the right amount of space. The soup was good. Maya had 2 bowls and declared it better than Adrian's, which was true. He called Dr. Reyes on a Wednesday. Ellen Reyes had been his therapist from 6 months after Lydia died until he'd tapered off at about the 14-month mark when he'd convinced himself and approximately half convinced her that he was functional. She was based in the city, she had a brief phone slot on Wednesday afternoons, and she picked up with the specific tone of someone who was not surprised to be hearing from him. "February," she said. "February," he confirmed. "How bad?" "Not bad," he said. "Present. I'm functioning fine. I just wanted to check in." "That's new?" she said. "You usually wait until it's bad." "I'm trying something different," he said. "Tell me about trying something different," she said. It was not a question. He told her about Sycamore Lane, about Hannah and Maya, and the mornings, and the soup, and the transformer, and the backyard. He told it in the flat, sequential way he'd learned to tell things to Dr. Reyes, without the editorial that made it into a story rather than a report, because she could find her own way through the material if he just gave her the material. She asked 3 questions. She was quiet for a while after. "You told her about the kidnapping," Ellen said. "Yes." "How did that feel?" "Like putting something down," he said. "Temporarily. Like I could pick it back up, but I'd had a break from carrying it." "That's a good sign," she said. "Or it means I'm outsourcing my emotional processing to someone who hasn't agreed to that." Has she seemed burdened by it? He thought about Hannah on the back step. Her hand on his, the fact that she'd said, "I care about you," in the same tone she'd used to tell him the gutter was separating. "No," he said. She holds it without flinching, which I don't entirely know what to do with." "What do you want to do with it?" "I want to deserve it," he said. Ellen was quiet for a moment. "That's an interesting frame," she said. "Deserving implies a transaction. Do you think what she's offering is conditional?" He thought about it. "No," he said. "That's the thing. It doesn't feel conditional, which is unfamiliar," Ellen said. "Yes. Unfamiliar to you specifically," she said, "because the things in your life that mattered most came with conditions, or ended. Your parents, Lydia. The company is built on performance. You've learned to expect contingency." "I know this," he said. "You know it analytically," she said. "Knowing it in the room is different." She paused. "What do you need for February?" "To get through it," he said, "the way I always do." "But differently than how you always have," she said, "since you don't have a conference to hide in." "I'm not hiding." "I didn't say you were. I said the conference was a place to hide. You could choose not to hide this year." He was quiet. "What would not hiding look like?" she asked. He didn't have an answer for that. He thanked her, scheduled a follow-up for 2 weeks out, and sat in the kitchen for a while after the call with his phone on the table and the February afternoon pressing gray against the windows. Not hiding. He turned the idea around in his head. What it might look like. What it might cost. Whether it was something he was capable of. He told Maya on a Sunday. Not the full version. She was 6, and the full version was not a 6-year-old's version. But he'd been carrying the partial version he'd given her for 4 years. Mama was in an accident. And it had been sitting wrong in him for a while, the way a small untruth sits wrong even when the intention behind it is protective. He sat with her on the floor of her room, the way he did sometimes when they needed to talk about something real, not at the kitchen table, not on the couch, but on the floor, at her level, where the conversation felt equal. "I want to tell you more about what happened to Mama," he said. Maya looked at him. She had her rabbit in her lap. She was very still in the way she went still when something important was being said. "You said it was an accident," she said. "It was," he said, "but it wasn't a car accident the way you might be thinking. It was..." He chose the words the way Dr. Reyes had helped him choose them. In the session 3 years ago when they'd discussed how he'd eventually have this conversation. Some people did something bad. They wanted to take money from our family. They were trying to scare us, and someone got hurt, and Mama was the person who got hurt. Maya was quiet. Her hands tightened slightly on the rabbit. "Were you there?" she said. "Yes," he said. "Did they hurt you?" "They scared me very much," he said, "but I wasn't hurt the same way Mama was." She processed this. He watched her face do the work of a child who is absorbing information that doesn't fit any shape she already had, turning it, trying to find where it goes. "Is that why you do the thing?" she said. He looked at her. "What thing?" "When you go very still," she said, "and it's like you're not here anymore. Like part of you goes somewhere else." She said it simply, without accusation, like a fact she'd been carrying and waiting for the right moment to place. He felt it hit him somewhere under his ribs. "Yeah," he said, "that's why." "I thought so," she said. "You never said anything," he said. "You seemed like you were handling it," she said, "and I didn't want to make it worse by talking about it." He looked at his daughter, 6 years old, this child who had been quietly protecting him in her 6-year-old way, deciding not to name the things she'd noticed because she didn't want to add to his weight, and felt something he couldn't name, or rather, could name but didn't trust himself to say right now, without his voice doing something he didn't want. "You can always make things worse by talking about them," he said, when he trusted himself to speak. "You can also always make them better. Keeping them in is usually worse than taking the risk." She thought about this. "Hannah says something like that," she said. "Does she?" "She says," Maya frowned, trying to remember exactly. "She says that the things you don't say get heavier than the things you do, because when you say them, at least someone else is holding some of the weight." He thought about Hannah on the back step, her hand on his. "That sounds like her," he said. Maya looked at him. "Are you going to be sad?" she asked. "About Mama? This week?" "Probably," he said. "The 14th is—" He stopped. "I'm sad every year on the 14th. It's okay to be sad. It doesn't mean anything is wrong." "Can I be sad too?" she said. "Of course," he said. "I don't really remember her," Maya said. It came out quietly, not with distress exactly, but with the specific weight of a child who knows she's supposed to feel something she can't fully access. "Is that bad?" "No," he said. "You were 2. You can't remember 2. "Will you tell me things about her?" she said. "So I have them, even if I can't remember?" He put his hand over hers. "Yeah," he said. "I'll tell you things about her." "Okay," she said. She leaned against him. After a moment, she said, "She would have liked Hannah." He didn't know how to answer that, so he just held his daughter and let her lean into him, and the February afternoon was quiet outside the window, and the rabbit was between them, and they sat there for a while without saying anything more. He went quiet again on the 12th. Not entirely, not in a way that was visible from the outside. He made coffee. He took Maya to school. He answered emails with appropriate content. But internally, he'd retreated to a place that was familiar and not good. The specific interior territory of someone who knows the hard thing is 2 days away and is already preemptively defending against it. Hannah texted on the 12th evening. "Lights on late again. Everything okay?" He looked at his phone for a moment. He typed, "February is hard. I mentioned the anniversary. I'm okay, just quiet." She replied, "Okay. I'm here if you need company. Also okay if you don't." He put the phone down. He sat in the kitchen of his parents' house with a cup of tea he'd made and not drunk, and thought about Ellen's question. What would not hiding look like? He picked up the phone again. "Can I come over for a bit?" Her reply was immediate. "Yes. Doors open." He crossed the street at 9:30 on a February evening. The cold was serious, well below freezing, the kind that made the air feel brittle. Hannah's porch light was on, as it always was, and when he pushed open the door, she'd meant it literally, the door was unlocked. The warmth of her house came out to meet him. She was in the kitchen, making tea, and she looked up when he came in and didn't say anything, just got down a second mug. He sat at her kitchen table. Gerald was in his bowl by the window, doing his small circuits in the glow of the under-cabinet light, Hannah left on at night. I don't know what I need, he said. I just didn't want to be in the house alone. Okay, she said. She set the mug in front of him. She sat down across from him. She had her own tea. She didn't push him to talk. They sat like that for a while. It wasn't a silence that demanded filling. Gerald swam. The kitchen was warm. Somewhere outside, a car went by slowly on the cold road. She liked mornings, he said, eventually. Hannah looked up. Lydia, he said. She was... Most people aren't morning people, but she genuinely was. She'd be up before 6, and she'd make this elaborate breakfast, like she had an hour and a half and nothing better to do. Eggs and fresh fruit and actual toast, not just bread from the toaster. He looked at his tea. I'm not a morning person. I never have been. She'd be in the kitchen making all of this at 6:15, and I'd come downstairs looking terrible, and she'd be... He stopped. She'd just be happy about the morning, like it was something that had specifically been offered to her. Hannah held her mug with both hands and didn't say anything. She would have been 35 this year, he said. She was 1 year younger than me. He pressed his thumbnail against the side of the mug. I've been thinking about that. What 35 would have looked like for her. She had ideas about... She was going to open a gallery. Art. She had this whole plan for a space in the city, and she'd found the location, and she was 6 months out from having the financing in order. He exhaled. She never got to do that. Do you think about it a lot? Hannah said. What she would have done. Less than I used to, he said. In the first year, I couldn't stop. It was every milestone. Maya's first steps, Maya's first word. Every one of those things had this shadow behind it, this person who should have been there and wasn't. He looked at the table. I don't think I'm grieving the same way I was. It's more like knowing there's a room in the house that's always locked. I know what's in there. I'm not going in there every day, but I know it's there. Hannah nodded slowly. Is that terrible? He said. That it's less present? No, she said. That's just time. She would have made Maya better breakfast, he said. It came out lighter than the rest of it, almost with a rye quality. Maya gets cereal and whatever I've managed to figure out. Lydia would have done... He shook his head. She had standards about food. Maya seems well fed to me, Hannah said. She is now, he said, largely because of you. I haven't fed her every meal. You fed her enough of them, he said. He looked at Hannah across the table. She told me Lydia would have liked you. Hannah blinked. Something shifted in her expression. Not discomfort, but the specific vulnerability of being offered something unexpected. She said that? Sunday, he said. She said it like it was a fact she'd established and was reporting. Hannah looked at Gerald for a moment. That's... She stopped, started again. That's a generous thing for her to say. She's a generous kid, he said. When she decides someone deserves it. She decided fast, Hannah said. She decided the first day, he said. The thing with Maya is she decides fast and then she doesn't change her mind easily. You have to earn a reversal with her, good or bad. He drank his tea. She hasn't given you any reason to earn a reversal. Hannah was quiet for a moment. Outside, the wind had picked up. A February wind, the kind that found every gap in the weatherproofing, though their weatherproofing was now good. Can I say something? Hannah said. Always, he said. I've been careful, she said, about this, about what this is. She turned her mug slowly on the table. I've been careful because I know how I work. I know that I get attached and that I don't unattach easily, and that when things go wrong with people I'm attached to, it takes me a long time to recover. She looked at him. And you came with a lot of history and a lot of pain and a little girl who I've already... She stopped. You've already gotten attached to her, he said. Yes, she said. And I didn't plan for that to happen this fast, and I couldn't seem to stop it. And now the question is what I do with the fact that I'm sitting in my grandmother's kitchen at 9:30 on a February night, and the answer to you asking if you could come over was yes before you'd finished the sentence. He looked at her. I'm not telling you this to pressure you, she said. I know the timing is... She gestured at the general air of February. I'm done being careful about saying things. I've been careful about saying things my whole life, and I've decided I'm done. What are you saying? He said. I'm saying that I'm in this, she said. Whatever this is, I'm in it. I don't need it to be named or scheduled or to look like anything in particular. I just need you to know that I'm here. Not because I'm a good person who helps neighbors, because I want to be here. He held her eyes. I know it's complicated, she said. I know you've got... She made a small gesture that encompassed, he understood, everything. The company, the history, the grief, the specific damage that showed up in backyards when transformers blew. I know all of that. I'm still in it. He was quiet for a moment, not the quiet of not knowing what to say, the quiet of being careful with what he said because it mattered. I told Ellen, my therapist, that I wanted to not hide this year, he said, for February. And she asked me what that would look like, and I didn't know. And I still don't know exactly, but I think it looks like this, coming across the street instead of sitting alone in the kitchen. That's a start, Hannah said. It's hard, he said. I want to be honest about that. This is hard for me. Not you. You specifically are not hard, but opening up a door that I closed for a reason and trusting that the reason isn't valid anymore or isn't the most important thing anymore. He stopped. That's not a fast process for me. I know, she said. I'm not going anywhere, he said. I want to be clear about that. I told Cale the same thing. I'm not going to disappear when it gets hard. I know that too, she said. And I want... He paused. I want what you said. To be in it. Whatever that looks like as we figure it out. She looked at him steadily. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. They sat for a while longer. He finished his tea. She made more. They didn't solve anything. There was nothing that required solving tonight. Nothing that could be resolved by a kitchen conversation. No gesture that would make February 14th not arrive in 2 days. But when he walked back across the street at 11:30 and looked back from his porch, her porch light was on, and the light in her kitchen was still on, and he stood there for a moment in the cold before going inside. The 14th was a Tuesday. He woke up at 5:30 without the alarm, the way he always did on this date, some internal mechanism that knew and prepared him in advance. He lay still for a few minutes. The house was dark and quiet. Maya wouldn't be up until 7. He got up and made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, just the light over the stove. The same way his mother used to sit in the mornings when she had things to think about. He thought about Lydia. He did this deliberately, not avoidance and not wallowing, but the thing Ellen had described as intentional remembrance, which was the practice of choosing to think about the person clearly and specifically rather than letting the grief happen to you sideways. He thought about the morning person, the elaborate breakfast, the gallery plan. He thought about her voice. She'd had a specific laugh, short and a little surprised, like she was always slightly startled to find something funny even when she'd expected to. He thought about the way she'd been with Maya in the 2 years they'd overlapped, which had been good. She'd been a good mother in the specific way of someone who took the job seriously without making it her only identity. He missed her. He missed her in the way that had become familiar, not the acute, violent grief of the first year, but the settled knowledge of a missing thing, the ghost outline of a person in the life she'd been building. He also understood, sitting in the kitchen on February 14th with his coffee in the dark, that missing her and building something new were not in competition. He hadn't fully believed that in January. He was closer to believing it now. Maya came downstairs at 7:10, still in pajamas, rabbit under her arm. She looked at him with the careful look she'd developed recently, checking, assessing his state before she landed on a tone. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he said. She climbed into the chair across from him and put the rabbit on the table, and they sat together for a minute. "Are you okay?" she said. "I'm okay," he said. "I'm sad. That's different from not okay." She nodded. "I'm a little sad too," she said. "That's okay," he said. "You're allowed." "Can we do something nice today?" she said. "Not to not be sad, just also nice, at the same time." He looked at her. What did you have in mind? Hannah could come for dinner, Maya said, and we could tell Mama stories, the ones you said you'd tell me. He thought about it. You want Hannah there for that? She won't make it weird, Maya said, with the confidence of a 6-year-old who had formed an opinion and stood behind it. She'll just listen. She's good at listening. He thought about Hannah in the kitchen at 9:30. I'm in it. He thought about the hand on his back in the backyard in January. He thought about what it meant that Maya, who had the specific radar of a child raised largely alone with one parent, had looked at Hannah and decided she was safe for the hard moments. I'll ask her, he said. Hannah came. She brought bread, because she always brought something, and she sat at the kitchen table and she listened while Adrian told Maya about Lydia, the morning person, the gallery, the elaborate breakfasts, the laugh. And Maya listened with the focused attention she brought to things that mattered to her, asking occasionally for details, filing them carefully. She sounds like she was really something, Hannah said when there was a natural pause. She was, Adrian said. Maya looked at Hannah. Dad said you would have liked each other, she said. Adrian looked at Maya. He hadn't said that. She had, on Sunday, reversed it, but he didn't correct her. I think I would have, Hannah said. The gallery thing especially. I like people who make plans and then make the plans real. She didn't get to make it real, Maya said. I know, Hannah said. That's the hard part. She didn't try to fix it or find the positive angle. She just said it and let it be true. Maya ate her dinner. She was quiet for a while, in the way she got quiet when she was filing something away. Not distressed, just processing. After dessert, Hannah had also brought cookies, oatmeal raisin, which Maya evaluated and deemed legitimately good, not just good for me. Maya got up and gave Hannah a hug that was brief and matter-of-fact, the kind that didn't ask for anything in return. Thanks for coming, Maya said, and went upstairs to get ready for bed. Hannah looked after her, then at the table, then at Adrian. She's something, Hannah said. She is, he said. He walked Hannah to the door at 8:30. The February night was still cold, the kind that didn't apologize, and the porch light across the street was already on. She pulled on her coat and they stood in the doorway for a moment, the warm house behind him and the cold street ahead of her. Thank you, he said. You keep thanking me, she said. I'll keep meaning it, he said. She looked at him in the light from the hall. She reached up and put her hand against the side of his face. Not a gesture he'd been expecting, simple and direct, warm against the cold air. She held it there for a moment. You did okay today, she said. Not you were so brave or that was so hard or any of the things that people said when they were trying to assign meaning to your difficulty. Just, you did okay today, as an observation, as a fact. He put his hand over hers. Yeah, he said. I did. She dropped her hand and stepped off the porch, and he stood in the doorway and watched her cross the street, her coat dark against the February night. And when she got to her porch, she turned and saw him still standing there. Neither of them waved. She just went inside, and a moment later the kitchen light came on in her house, and the porch light was already on. And Adrian stood in the doorway of his parents' house on the 14th of February and felt the grief that was always there on this date. Felt it fully, didn't manage it, or schedule it, or hide it in a conference in Singapore. And also felt, beside it and around it, the specific weight of a life that was continuing to be lived. He went back inside. He washed the dishes. He checked on Maya, who was asleep with the rabbit and the bird field guide open on her chest, and he carefully moved the book to the nightstand and turned off her lamp. He stood at his kitchen window before he went to bed. The street was quiet. The neighbor's oak tree had no lights on it now. Those had come down after New Year's. The fire hydrant was dark and small at the corner. Across the street, Hannah's porch light was on. It would be on when he woke up. It would be on tomorrow and the day after. It had been on the first night he'd arrived on this street, alone with a sleeping child in a house full of empty rooms and the specific hollowness of a man who had come back to the last place he'd been someone he recognized. He'd needed that light then. He needed it still, though for different reasons now. Not because he was lost, but because it was there, consistent and unglamorous and exactly itself, the way the person who kept it on was exactly herself, no more and no less, offering what she had without condition. He turned off the kitchen light and went to bed, and February 14th ended the way days end, whether or not they've been significant, quietly, without announcement, folding into the dark of the next morning. March arrived, and with it the first credible suggestion of warmth. Not warmth exactly. The mornings were still cold and the nights dropped back below freezing. But the quality of the light changed, the angle of it, and the oak trees on Sycamore Lane showed the very beginning of their spring intentions in the tiny, tight buds along the bare branches. Adrian noticed things he hadn't noticed in October, when he'd arrived. He noticed the way the street changed at different hours. The retired couple at number 7 who walked the same route every morning at 8. The teenager at number 4 who practiced what appeared to be a one-person performance on the front porch every Sunday. The elementary school kids who cut through on their way home. The same 3 kids, same route. Every afternoon at 3:15. He'd been here 5 months. The street had become, in the incremental way things become, his. The business required more of him now, not in the frantic, all-consuming way of the years before, but in the steady, manageable way of something being run by someone who had relearned to be present. He worked mornings, mostly. The house was quiet while Maya was at school, and he'd set up a proper workspace in what had been his parents' study, a room he'd been avoiding since October, and had finally cleared out in February with the specific resolution of someone who had decided to stop treating a room like a wound. Marcus visited in the second week of March. He arrived Friday evening, having made the drive from the city after his own workday, and Adrian made dinner, the pasta he'd gotten reliably good at. And Marcus ate it and said nothing about it being actual food rather than something ordered from a restaurant, which was itself a comment. "You're different," Marcus said. "You've said that," Adrian said. "I keep saying it because it keeps being true." He drank his water. Maya had gone to bed an hour ago, and they were at the kitchen table in the particular ease that exists between people who've been through difficult things together professionally and never needed to address it directly. "The Hendricks deal is done, clean. The team handled it well." "I know," Adrian said. "I was there for most of it." "Partially there." "Partially there," he agreed. "That's the point." Marcus looked at the kitchen. At the pasta bowl, the evidence of a meal actually cooked. At the child's drawing on the refrigerator, Maya had started a series she called The Neighborhood, which were elaborate and highly personal interpretations of every house on the street. "How's the neighbor?" he said. Adrian looked at him. "I'm not asking to ask," Marcus said. "I'm asking because you mentioned her in October as someone who kept you fed, and in January as someone who sat with you in a backyard, and I'm curious about the progression." "The progression," Adrian said. "You know what I mean." He did. He thought about how to answer. "It's—" He stopped. "I told her about the company," he said. "The scale of it, and it didn't change anything." Marcus raised his eyebrows. Not in surprise, Adrian thought, but in the specific expression of someone whose private assessment has been confirmed. "She already knew you were someone," Marcus said. "She didn't know the specifics." "She knew," Marcus said. "People who pay attention know. The specifics are just numbers." Adrian thought about what Hannah had said. Money is a fact. It's not a personality. "She said something like that," he said. "Smart woman," Marcus said. "Tell her I said so." "I won't be doing that," Adrian said. Marcus smiled, which was rare enough to be notable. "The city office has been asking when you're coming back formally," he said. "Not pressure, they're fine, but eventually." "I know," Adrian said. "I'm thinking about a structure where I'm here for most of the week and in the city when I need to be. 2-3 days a month." "That's workable," Marcus said. "I know," Adrian said. "It's going to be workable." He said it not as a hope, but as a decision already made. "I'm not going back to what it was, the 70-hour weeks, the conferences instead of—" He stopped. "It didn't make the company better. It made me more absent. Those aren't the same thing." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "Your father would have liked this version," he said. Adrian looked at his pasta bowl. His father had known Marcus. They'd overlapped for 2 years before the elder Sterling died. And his father had said once, unprompted, that Adrian's COO was the kind of man who told you things you needed to hear without enjoying it, which was the best kind. "Yeah," Adrian said. He would have. Hannah found the article on a Saturday in mid-March. She didn't come to him with it immediately. He didn't know this until later, when she told him. She'd been doing a routine search for something else, and his name had come up in a financial publication's retrospective on the previous year's most significant deals, and she'd sat with the article for a full afternoon before she knocked on his door. He answered, and she was standing on the porch with her phone, and she showed it to him without saying anything. He looked at it. The article was from November, a profile piece that his PR team had been managing. There was a photo taken at an event the previous spring before he'd left, and a number and a description of Sterling Capital's position in the market that was accurate and comprehensive and said essentially exactly what he'd told her in January, but with specific figures attached. He looked up from the phone. "You knew," she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a check. "I told you it was significant," he said. "Significant is one word for it," she said. He stepped back from the door. She came in. They went to the kitchen. Their kitchen conversation by now, the default location for anything that needed to be said directly. She sat down. He sat across from her. She put the phone face down on the table. "How long did you know you were going to tell me?" she said. "I knew I needed to from fairly early on," he said. "I kept waiting for the timing to be right." "Was the timing right in January?" "I thought so," he said. "I thought I'd given you enough of the rest of it first that the number wouldn't be the whole picture." She was quiet. He watched her work through it. "I'm not upset that you're—" She gestured at the phone. "That's not the issue. The issue is—" She stopped, started again. "My whole life, money has been the thing that complicated everything. My dad left when the money ran out. The people I've known who had a lot of it were either ruined by it or using it to maintain a version of themselves that wasn't real." She looked at him. "And you've been here, on this street, fixing fences and making pasta and learning to bake. And I built a picture of you that was you. And this," she indicated the phone, "this isn't not you. I know it's still you, but it's a part of you I had to find in a magazine rather than from you, and that matters," he said. "It matters," she said. "Not the money, the not telling." He held her eyes. "I know," he said. "I waited too long. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment, but the truth is, I didn't want to risk it." "Risk what?" "Risk you treating me differently," he said. "The way people always—" He stopped. "You asked me like an ordinary person. You told me when I was wrong about things. You handed me coffee and left me Post-its and told me my soup needed more salt, and I didn't want to lose that because of a number." She looked at the table. "I told you money isn't a personality." "You did," he said. "I believed you. I still took too long." She was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the March morning was doing its tentative best. Pale sun, bare trees beginning their slow return. "I'm not going to pretend that what I read today didn't make the picture sharper," she said. "Because it did. I have a clearer sense of what your life outside this street actually looks like, and it's a lot to hold." She looked up. "But I meant what I said in February. I'm in this. That hasn't changed." "Are you sure?" he said. Not challenging, genuinely asking. "I'm sure," she said. I need a minute to sit with the sharper picture. That's all. I'm not running. I just need a minute." "Take the time you need," he said. "I'm not asking for permission," she said, with the edge she used when she was being precise about something. "I know," he said. "I'm saying I'm not going anywhere while you take it." She nodded slowly. She picked up her phone. She stood up. "I'm going home," she said. "I'll probably come back for coffee tomorrow." "Doors open," he said. She looked at him. Something in her expression was still working through it. The recalibration, the new map, the settling of a picture into a larger frame. But underneath that, and around it, was the thing that had been there since October, the fundamental quality of a person who had decided about someone and didn't undecide easily. "The porch light is still going to be on," she said. It wasn't a question. "I know," he said. "Good," she said. "That's the important thing." She left. He stood in the kitchen and heard her cross the street and heard her door open and close. He sat down at the table in the quiet of the March morning and felt the specific weight of having told the full truth and the specific relief of the same thing. There was still the future to build. There were still things to work through. The distance between what she now knew and what she'd fully absorbed, the work of two people deciding what this has looked like with the full picture on the table. None of that was simple. None of it resolved in a conversation. But the porch light was still going to be on. That, he thought, was the important thing. He made coffee and waited, in the patient way he was learning to wait, for whatever came next. Hannah came back the next morning. Not at the usual time. Not at 8 when the coffee was ready and the routine was established. She came at 7:15, earlier than she'd ever knocked, and when Adrian opened the door, she was holding her own mug from home, already half empty, and she looked like someone who had been up for a while thinking through something and had arrived at the end of it. "I read the whole article," she said. He stepped back. She came in. "And then I read 3 more," she said, sitting down at the kitchen table in her usual chair. "Because once you start, you apparently can't stop. There's a lot of coverage." "There is," he said. He poured his own coffee and sat across from her. "You were on the cover of a magazine in 2021, she said. "Yes." "You have a Wikipedia page." "I've been told it's not entirely accurate." "The photo is good," she said. He looked at her. She was looking at her mug, and there was something in her expression that was doing several things at once, working through, settling, arriving somewhere. "I'm not telling you this to make a point," she said. "I just want you to know that I did the reading, that I went home and I sat with it and I did the reading, and now I know what I know." She looked up. "And here's what I know. You came back to your parents' house on a quiet street and you fixed your own fence and you learned to make pasta and you sat on a cold back step in January and told me the truth about the worst thing that ever happened to you." She set her mug down. "The Wikipedia page doesn't change any of that." "No," he said. "It doesn't." "I was scared yesterday," she said. "I want to be honest about that. Not of you. Of the scale of it. Of what it would mean to be adjacent to that kind of life. Because it's not a life I know how to navigate, and I don't want to become someone who's defined by proximity to someone else's." "Hannah," he said. She stopped. "I'm not asking you to navigate my public life," he said. "I'm asking you to have coffee with me in the morning. That's all. The rest of it exists, and I won't pretend it doesn't, but it doesn't have to be the thing this is about." She looked at him steadily. "It's never just coffee," she said. "We both know that." "No," he said. "It's not just coffee." "So what is it?" He thought about how to answer. He'd been thinking about it since October, in the incremental way he thought about things that mattered. Not all at once, but in pieces, each piece requiring the one before it. He thought about the first morning he'd knocked on her door, the shortbread that was too dense, the fence, the 3 days with no heat, Thanksgiving and Christmas and February 14th, the soup from Kale's recipe, the backyard. All of it, assembled over months into something he didn't have a clean word for but understood clearly. "It's the best thing I've built in 4 years," he said. "And I've built some significant things." She held his eyes for a long moment. "Okay," she said, and then after a pause, "Your coffee is better than it used to be." He almost laughed. "I've been practicing." "I know," she said. "I've been drinking it." Spring came in properly in the last week of March, the way it does in the Midwest. Not gradually, but in a sudden decision, like the season had been deliberating and finally committed. The oak trees on Sycamore Lane went from bare to the first soft green in what felt like 4 days. The lawn in front of the old Whitmore house needed attention, and Adrian dealt with it on a Saturday morning while Maya supervised from the porch with the bird field guide, calling out species she spotted with the authority of someone who had been studying the subject for 2 months. "House sparrow," she said, pointing at the fence. "You said that about the last 3 birds," he said. "There are a lot of house sparrows," she said with dignity. "They're common." Hannah came out of her house across the street with her coffee and stood on her own porch watching them for a moment, then came over. She had a sweater on over her pajama top, her hair still loose, the particular state of someone who'd come outside before she was entirely ready for the world, but had decided the morning was worth it. "House sparrow," Maya said, pointing. "Looks right to me," Hannah said. "Dad keeps questioning my identifications," Maya said. I'm not questioning, Adrian said. I'm noting that statistically. How's Sparrow? Maya said firmly. Hannah sat down on the porch step beside Maya, and they looked at the yard together. And Adrian went back to the lawn with the specific awareness of a man who understood, watching his daughter and this woman share a porch step in the March morning, that he was living inside something he would have been unable to imagine 7 months ago. That thought landed with more weight than he'd expected. He leaned on the lawn mower for a moment and looked at them. The two of them, Maya pointing at a bird and Hannah leaning to see where she was pointing, and felt something he'd been feeling in pieces for months now arrive as a complete thing, without question or qualification. He was going to marry her someday. He didn't say it. It wasn't the moment to say it. They were 3 months from the conversation in the kitchen. They were still building the ordinary architecture of a life together, and Hannah had been clear about needing things to be real before they were named. But the knowledge was there, solid and unambiguous, the way the best decisions feel, not like something chosen, but like something recognized. He went back to the lawn. Though the library was Hannah's project. She'd been working as a bookkeeper for the same 3 clients for 4 years, and she was good at it, and it paid what it paid, which was enough, but not comfortable. The town's small public library was in the process of a reorganization. The director had retired, the board was restructuring, and they were looking for someone to take over the administrative and financial management of the building and its programming. She mentioned it to Adrian on a Tuesday evening over dinner. His dinner, at his table, which had become the default 3 or 4 evenings a week, with a naturalness that none of them had formally arranged. The library posted a position, she said. I saw the posting, he said. He'd been reading the local paper, his father's habit fully reinstated. Financial and operations manager. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I'm qualified, she said. I'm thinking I've wanted to do something that feels like it matters beyond the numbers. And a library feels like it matters. She poked at her pasta. I'm also thinking it pays less than my current setup, at least in the short term, and I need to be practical about that. How much less? She told him. He did the math in his head. He did math quickly, a lifetime habit, and thought about what he could offer without overstepping. He'd thought about Hannah's finances before, in the way you think about things you'd like to fix when you have the means to fix them, and someone has told you directly that fixing things without asking is something they don't appreciate. Could you cover the gap for a transition period? He asked. 3 months, 6 months, while the new position establishes itself? She looked at him. Without it being a thing, he said. Just a practical arrangement. You'd pay it back whenever it made sense, or not. And either way, Adrian. I know, he said. I know what you're going to say. I don't take money from people, she said. You take things of value from people, he said. You've taken soup and fence repairs, and I once changed your car's cabin air filter without being asked, and you let that go. That cost $11. The principle is the same, he said. You let me help when it made sense. This makes sense. She sat back in her chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment with the expression she used when she was losing an argument she hadn't wanted to have. I don't want to owe you, she said. Not because I don't trust you. Because I've spent my whole life being careful about owing people, and it's not something I can turn off. Then don't owe me, he said. Let it be what a partner does. People in partnerships help each other with practical problems. That's not debt. That's just how it works. She looked at him. Partner, she said. Is that the wrong word? She thought about it. No, she said. It's the right word. A pause. I'll apply for the library job. If I get it, we'll figure out the numbers. That's all I'm asking, he said. You were asking for more than that, she said. I was, he admitted, but I'll take that. She got the job. She found out on a Thursday in April and called him before she'd even left the library parking lot, which was the first time she'd called him instead of texted with news, and the quality of her voice on the phone, startled and pleased in equal measure, was something he filed away in the same place he filed Maya's Sparrow identifications and the shortbread that was too dense and February 14th. I got it, she said. I know, he said. You don't know, you're guessing. I knew when you told me you applied, he said. I just waited for the confirmation. You're insufferable, she said, and he could hear the smile in it. "Congratulations," he said. She laughed, that short, startled laugh that he'd heard for the first time in October and had been collecting ever since. "Thank you," she said. "I'll make dinner tonight. Come over." He came over. Maya came with him. Hannah had made her grandmother's chicken recipe, the complicated one she reserved for occasions, and the kitchen smelled the way it had the first Thanksgiving. Full and warm, the smell of something made with actual effort. They ate, and Maya declared the chicken the best thing she'd personally ever consumed, which she'd also said about the Thanksgiving turkey and the Christmas pie, but which Hannah received with the same straightforward pleasure each time. "You can't have a best thing every time," Adrian said. "Why not?" Maya said. He thought about it. "You can," he said. "Fair point, Mum." In April, quietly and without announcement, Adrian began redirecting a portion of Sterling Capital's community investment budget toward Maple Creek. Not his personal money. That would have felt too direct, too much like a gesture rather than a commitment. The company had a community development fund that had historically gone toward urban initiatives in the cities where they operated. He worked with Marcus and the fund's director to extend the parameters to include smaller municipalities and Maple Creek, which needed a renovated community center, a repaired pedestrian bridge over the creek at the south end of town, and significantly better programming at the public library. Fit the new parameters without difficulty. He didn't tell Hannah about the library funding specifically. The fund operated through the town's grant application process, and the library board had applied on their own initiative, not knowing that the company reviewing their application had any connection to the street where two of its board members lived. It was a clean transaction. He wasn't buying her anything. He was putting resources toward a place that mattered because he was a person who lived there now and had the means to help. Marcus raised an eyebrow during the review call. "The library in Maple Creek," he said. "It fits the parameters," Adrian said. "It does," Marcus agreed. "I'm just noting." "Note noted," Adrian said. "The pedestrian bridge is a nice touch," Marcus said. "Also happens to be 2 blocks from a certain street." "The bridge has needed repair for 6 years," Adrian said. "I've read the town records." "You've read the town records," Marcus repeated in a tone. "I'm a thorough person," Adrian said. "You're a man who's put down roots and is watering them," Marcus said, and then moved to the next agenda item without waiting for a response, which was the most diplomatic thing Marcus had done in their entire professional relationship. May arrived, and with it the particular energy of a town waking up from winter. The farmers' market expanded to twice a week. The elementary school held its spring concert, at which Maya performed a recorder piece that she had practiced with diligence for 6 weeks, and which was technically accurate if not emotionally expressive. A distinction she explained to Adrian beforehand. "I can play the notes. The feeling part comes later with more practice." Hannah came to the concert. She sat beside Adrian in the 3rd row of the school gymnasium, and when Maya's class filed onto the risers, Maya found them in the audience and gave a small, contained wave that was clearly designed to be invisible to her classmates, which Adrian received without acknowledging because he understood the social calculus. "She's nervous," Hannah said quietly. "She doesn't show it," Adrian said. "She's doing the thing where she's very still," Hannah said. "She does that when she's working hard not to look like she's working hard." He looked at Hannah. "You've noticed that?" "I've been watching her for 7 months," Hannah said. The recorder piece went fine. Maya played every note correctly and maintained an expression of focused concentration throughout, and took her bow at the end with the dignity of someone who had completed a professional obligation, and Adrian and Hannah both applauded with the specific enthusiasm of people who understood what the preceding 6 weeks of practice had required. Afterward, in the school parking lot, Maya found them and said, "I didn't make any mistakes." "No," Adrian said, "you didn't." "Hannah," Maya said, "did you think it was good?" "I thought it was exactly right," Hannah said. "You played exactly what you practiced. That's the job." Maya considered this evaluation. "That's a good way to say it," she said. "That's exactly what I was going for." They went for ice cream after because it was May and warm enough, and because Maya had negotiated this as the post-concert arrangement 6 weeks in advance. They sat at the outdoor tables of the small place on Main Street, and Adrian watched Hannah and Maya argue companionably about the relative merits of chocolate versus strawberry. Maya was for chocolate with evangelical conviction. Hannah maintained that strawberry was underrated, and people dismissed it because they thought simple meant inferior. Simple doesn't mean inferior, Hannah said. Chocolate is also simple, Maya said. Chocolate is dramatic, Hannah said. Strawberry is honest. Maya stared at her. Ice cream isn't honest or dishonest, she said. It's ice cream. Most things are more than what they look like, Hannah said, in the tone she used when she was saying something she meant more broadly. Maya looked at Adrian. He looked at Maya. She's right, he said. You always take her side, Maya said. I take the correct side, he said. Maya ate her chocolate ice cream with the dignified silence of someone who had lost a debate on a technicality and had not accepted the result in her heart. He looked at Hannah across the table. The May evening was warm and the street was full of people doing the ordinary things of a small town on a nice evening, and Hannah had a little strawberry ice cream on her chin that she didn't know about yet, and Maya was scowling at her chocolate with theatrical intensity, and the moment was imperfect and completely, utterly sufficient. He reached across the table and touched Hannah's chin. She blinked. He showed her the ice cream on his thumb. Oh, she said, and got a napkin, and Maya looked up from her scowl and started laughing, really laughing, the full-body kind, and the evening broke open around them. He told her he loved her on a Saturday in late May. Not planned. He'd thought about it. He was someone who thought about things. But the moment itself arrived unannounced, the way the real moments usually do, and all the thinking he'd done in advance turned out to be preparation for something that happened between 1 second and the next without ceremony. They were in her backyard. She'd been planting. Her grandmother had kept a kitchen garden along the south fence, and Hannah had been restoring it, which involved a fair amount of dirt and some strong opinions about where things should go. He'd been helping, which mostly meant holding things she handed him, and passing tools, and occasionally being corrected about the depth of a hole he'd dug. Deeper, she said. That's the third time you've said that about a different hole, Wooch, he said. Because you keep digging them the same wrong depth, she said, not looking up from the seedling she was unwrapping. There's a right depth for a reason. The roots need room. He dug deeper. He handed her the seedling. She settled it in with the careful, competent hands of someone who'd learned this from someone who'd learned it from someone else. And he watched her press the soil around the base and thought about roots and room and everything that required both to grow and said, I love you. She went still. He hadn't said it to anyone since Lydia. He hadn't expected the words to arrive today, in a backyard with dirt on his hands, while she was planting tomatoes. But they arrived, and they were true. And he said them. She sat back on her heels. She looked at the seedling for a moment. Then she looked at him. Her expression was not the expression he'd imagined. Not surprised. Not undone. Not performing an emotion for his benefit. She looked like someone who had suspected something was true and had been waiting for it to be said out loud. I know, she said. He looked at her. I've known for a while, she said. I was waiting for you to get there. You knew, he said. You've been... She gestured at the garden, at him, at the general situation. You show it. I just didn't know if you knew you were showing it. And you? He said. She looked at the seedling again. Then at him. Yes, she said. For a while. He sat down in the dirt beside her, which was not something he'd have done 7 months ago. The sitting in dirt, the not minding it, and she leaned into his shoulder and they sat there in her grandmother's garden in the May afternoon with the smell of turned earth around them. We're going to get this on the porch steps, she said. The dirt? Yes. That's okay, he said. She laughed softly. You're much more relaxed about dirt than you used to be. I've been practicing, he said. You've been practicing being a person, she said. Not unkindly, as an observation. He thought about that. Yeah, he said. I have. You're better at it than you think, she said. You're still better at it than me. I've had more practice, she said. I didn't have the option of outsourcing it. He thought about what that meant. The years she'd navigated alone, the house she'd maintained, the grief she'd carried quietly, the care she'd given without anyone to give it back. He thought about her grandmother saying there should always be a light for someone passing by. He thought about a woman who'd absorbed that lesson so completely it had become simply who she was. Thank you, he said. She looked at him sidelong. You keep thanking me. I keep meaning it, he said, the same thing he'd said in February. She put her hand over his where it rested in the dirt. Stop thanking me and help me plant the rest of these, she said. He did. Summer settled over Sycamore Lane with the particular generosity of a season that knows it's waited for. The oak trees went full and heavy with their green. The neighborhood kids materialized on the sidewalks and stayed until dark. Maya's civilization under the stepping stones reached what she described as a mature stage of development that required careful observation and absolutely no intervention from adults. She'd been corresponding with her friend Danny about an ambitious joint research project involving local insect populations, a project that had produced 14 hand-drawn diagrams and required Hannah to locate 3 specific library books. Hannah had been in the library job for 6 weeks by the end of June. She came home from it the way you come home from something that fits, tired in the right way, with specific stories, with the slightly disheveled quality of someone who'd been engaged all day in something that actually used her. The library was getting new funding. There'd been a grant. The board had announced it at the May meeting more than they'd expected. And there were plans for expanded programming, a children's wing renovation, 2 new staff positions. She told Adrian about the grant over dinner, enthusiastic and detailed, and he'd listened and asked the right questions and said the right things. And later, when she'd gone home, he'd sat with the knowledge of what he'd done and felt not pride exactly, but something quieter. The satisfaction of someone who had put resources toward something real and watched it matter to someone who didn't know the source. He would tell her eventually, not yet, when it was the right time. He was getting better at finding the right time, which was itself a kind of progress. Kel came in June, a longer visit than December's, a full week, this time with enough warning that Hannah made the guest room actually habitable. He and Adrian developed a rapport that was comfortable, if not exactly easy, the rapport of 2 people who respected each other's specific competencies and agreed on the important things without needing to agree on everything. They worked on the pedestrian bridge repair one afternoon, volunteer labor, the town had organized it, and both of them had signed up independently and arrived at the same time on a Saturday morning with work gloves. You signed up for this, Cale said when he saw Adrian. So did you, Adrian said. I live 5 states away, Cale said. I signed up because Hannah told me about it. I live 2 blocks away, Adrian said. I signed up because it needed doing. Cale looked at him, then at the bridge. You have anything to do with the funding for this? Adrian was quiet for a moment. The company has a community development fund, he said. It operates through the town's grant process. Uh-huh, Cale said. It's not... I know what it is, Cale said. I'm a structural engineer. I know how community infrastructure gets funded and who's usually behind it when it appears in a town this size. He picked up a piece of railing. Does Hannah know? Not yet, Adrian said. Cale was quiet for a moment. Tell her, he said. Not because she'll be upset, because she should know. She doesn't like finding out things secondhand. I know, Adrian said. I will. Soon, Cale said. Soon, Adrian agreed. They worked the rest of the morning without discussing it further. The bridge took shape around them, and the town volunteers who'd showed up were mostly people Adrian now recognized. The retired couple from number 7, the teenager from number 4 who turned out to be genuinely skilled with a wrench, the man from the dental office who Hannah did books for, and who had brought excellent coffee in a massive thermos and shared it without being asked. Walking home in the afternoon, Cale said, She's happy. Yeah? Adrian said. I haven't seen her like this since before our mom got sick, Cale said. She's always been fine, but fine isn't the same as happy. He looked at the street. She's happy. Adrian thought about Hannah in the May garden, the strawberry ice cream, the library call from the parking lot, the way she said things directly, without softening them for anyone's comfort, including his. Yeah, he said. She is. Don't screw it up, Cale said, in the same tone he'd used in December. Not a threat, just a statement of preference. Working on it, Adrian said. He told her about the library grant on a Tuesday evening in July. They were on her porch, the porch with the repaired railing that had been roped off in October, which he'd fixed in May without asking and which she'd allowed without comment, which he took as a sign of progress. The evening was warm and the fireflies had started, which Maya treated as a scientific event of personal significance and which Adrian had come to find genuinely beautiful in a way he wouldn't have admitted to before October. He told her plainly. The community fund, the grant parameters, the library application that had come through the standard process. He told her without framing it or softening it, the way she'd taught him to tell things. She listened. She looked at the yard while he talked. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. The bridge too? She said. Yes, he said. The community center renovation that's being announced next month? He nodded. She was quiet for a longer moment. A firefly lit up near the fence, then went dark. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. I'm working through it, she said. Give me a second. He gave her a second. The library needed that money, she said. The programming we're building. We couldn't have done it without the grant. 2 people have jobs now who didn't before. She looked at the yard. That's real. It is, he said. I want you to tell me things like this, she said. I want to know when you're doing something that affects things I'm part of. Not because I need to approve it. Because you knowing what matters to me and caring about it. She stopped. That should be something I know about. That's not a secret to keep. You're right, he said. I should have told you when it happened. You were figuring out the right time, she said, not entirely without irony. I was figuring out the right time, he agreed. I'm working on that. I know, she said. I'm not... She exhaled. Thank you for caring about what matters here, about the town. She paused. About the bridge specifically, which was a safety issue and has been a safety issue for years, and whoever decided to finally fund it did a good thing. Whoever, he said. She looked at him sidelong. Don't push it, she said. Noted, he said. They sat on the porch in the July evening with the fireflies doing their slow work across the yard, and the street was quiet, and somewhere down the block someone was playing music at a low volume that drifted without being intrusive. I found out something today, she said. What's that? Gerald died, she said. He looked at her. This morning, she said. I came down and he was... She made a small gesture. He was just at the bottom of the bowl. He was old, I think, for a fish. I don't actually know how old he was. He came with the house, from the woman who sold it. From your grandmother? My grandmother was renting, she said. When she bought the house from the previous owners, Gerald was in the bowl on the counter, and the previous owners left him. So he came with the house, and I kept him. How long ago was that? 7 years, she said. Maybe 8. He thought about Gerald in his bowl, doing his small circles, present at every conversation in that kitchen, witness to every morning coffee and difficult talk and shared meal. I'm sorry, he said. It's a fish, she said. It's fine. But she said it in the way people say it's fine when something small has ended, and the smallness of it makes the ending feel disproportionately significant because small things can hold a lot of history. Maya will want to do something, he said. I know, Hannah said. She'll want a funeral. She'll have opinions about the location. She always has opinions about locations, Hannah said, the edge of a smile. We'll figure it out. He put his arm around her on the porch, and she leaned into it in the way she'd learned to, which was not immediately or fully, but gradually, settling into it with the specific quality of someone who was choosing to let it hold her rather than being unaware of it. The porch light was on. It was always on by now, well before dark. She turned it on at dusk as an automatic thing, the same way she'd always done, the same way her grandmother had done before her. Gerald's memorial was held the following Saturday. Maya had organized it. This meant there was a proper location, the corner of Hannah's backyard near the garden, where Maya had identified a spot with good afternoon light, and a spoken tribute that she had written herself and revised twice, and a small stone she'd painted with the word Gerald in careful letters that she placed at the marked spot. Adrian and Hannah stood on either side of her while she read the tribute, which was matter-of-fact and sincere in the way Maya was matter-of-fact and sincere about things she took seriously. She noted Gerald's years of service to the household, his consistent character, his role as a witness to important conversations, and his contribution to the atmosphere of the kitchen. He was not interactive, she read, but he was present. And sometimes that's enough. Hannah made a small sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite something else. Maya placed the stone. She stepped back and stood between them, and Adrian put his hand on her shoulder, and she leaned against him in the particular way she leaned against him, not fully, maintaining her dignity, and looked at the corner of the garden. He had a good life, Maya said. He did, Hannah said. He got to be in a kitchen where people talk to each other, Maya said, with the philosophical certainty of someone who had decided this was the measure of a good fish life. That's better than a lot of fish get. That's true, Adrian said. They stood there for a moment, the three of them, in the July garden with the tomatoes Hannah had planted in May, now growing steadily along the south fence and the afternoon light coming through the oak tree at the property line and the small painted stone at their feet. Then Maya said, "Can we get another fish?" Hannah looked at her. "Eventually," she said. "What would you name it?" Maya asked. Hannah thought about it. "I don't know yet," she said. "The name has to fit the fish." "Gerald too," Maya suggested. "Absolutely not," Hannah said. "Gerald Jr." "No. Post-Gerald." Adrian closed his eyes briefly. "We'll see what fish we get," Hannah said firmly, "and then name it." Maya accepted this with the grace of someone who had made her opening bids and would return to the negotiating table at a more favorable moment. She picked up her stone painting supplies from the ground and went inside, and Adrian and Hannah stood in the garden after she'd gone. "Post-Gerald," Hannah said. "She has range," he said. "She does," Hannah said. She looked at the stone. He really was there for a lot of conversations. "He was," Adrian said. She turned and looked at the house. Her grandmother's house. Her house. The yellow-painted house with the porch light and the kitchen where everything important had been said. Then she looked at the house across the street, the old Whitmore house, the house with the lopsided Christmas tree that needed them, and the shortbread that had started too dense, and the kitchen table where a man had learned slowly that being known was not the same as being lost. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "Tell me," he said. "About next year," she said. "About what next year looks like. Whether it looks like—" She stopped, started again, in the Hannah way, which was to go directly at the thing rather than around it. "I don't want to keep going back and forth across the street," she said. "That's what I'm trying to say." He looked at her. "I'm not saying right now," she said. "I'm saying eventually, when it's right. I want there to be one house, not two. I want—" She paused. "I want what we already have, but without the part where we cross the street." He was quiet for a moment, feeling the weight of what she'd said, not the surprise of it, because he'd been thinking about exactly this, but the specific texture of her saying it first, in the garden, directly, without making him wait for the right moment, because she'd decided she was done being careful about saying things. "Which house?" he said. She looked at him. "What do you mean, which house?" "Your grandmother's house or my parents' house," he said. "Which one do we keep?" She blinked. "I hadn't gotten that far." "This one," he said without any particular deliberation. "Your grandmother's house. The porch light stays where it is." She looked at him. Something moved through her expression that she didn't try to manage or redirect. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I want to," he said. "I came back to find something I recognized. And I found it. But it's not the house that I found it in." He looked at her. "The house is a house. You're what I found." She held his eyes for a long moment. "I need to actually think about the logistics," she said. "The timing, This isn't something we decide in a garden." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking you to decide in a garden. I'm just answering your question." She looked at the house, then at the street, then at him. "Okay," she said. "Okay?" "Okay," she said. We'll figure out the logistics. Huts. The last Saturday of August, Sycamore Lane had its annual block party. Adrian had not known this was a tradition until the flyer appeared in his mailbox in late July, hand-delivered by the teenager from number 4, who also turned out to organize the event with the methodical energy of someone who had strong opinions about community. Adrian had signed up to bring the pasta salad, which he made the night before with the quiet confidence of someone who'd been cooking for a year now and knew when something was right. Hannah brought pie. There were 6 pies total at the party. She always brought pie to communal events now. It had become a fact about her in the neighborhood, the same way the porch light was a fact. And hers disappeared first, which she registered with the specific satisfaction she never performed but always felt. Maya had brought her bird field guide, and Danny, who had come as her guest, and the two of them conducted what appeared to be an official bird survey of the block while the adults ate and talked. They produced a formal report at the end of the afternoon. 14 species, 2 disputed identifications, and 1 Danny claimed was a hawk, but which Maya's guide identified as a large pigeon, which Danny refused to accept. "That was not a pigeon," Danny said with conviction. "The guide is clear," Maya said. "The guide can be wrong." "The guide is never wrong," Maya said. "Everything can be wrong," Danny said. Maya looked at Adrian, who looked at Hannah, who looked at the sky. "I don't see the bird anymore," Hannah said. "So we'll call it a disputed identification and move on." Both girls found this acceptable. The survey was filed. He stood with Hannah and the couple from number 7, Robert and Diane, who'd lived on this street for 31 years and knew things about it that no one else did anymore, who told him things about his parents' early years in the house that he hadn't known, and looked at the street as the afternoon light went long and gold over it. The oak trees were full and heavy with August. The fire hydrant was red and gold. The pedestrian bridge 2 blocks over was repaired and safe and would hold for another 20 years. The library had a children's wing in renovation and 2 new staff members and a fall programming schedule that Hannah had been working on for weeks. The yard behind the yellow house had tomatoes in it now, growing along the south fence where her grandmother's garden had been, and where a painted stone sat near the corner. He thought about October, the moving truck leaving, the empty house, the specific loneliness of a man who had survived things he'd never expected to survive and had not yet learned what surviving was supposed to be for. 1 porch light on. That was all it had taken. 1 porch light, and a woman who made too much coffee and told him things directly and held his hand in a January backyard and planted tomatoes like she meant to stay. He hadn't been looking for any of this. He hadn't come back to this street expecting anything except quiet and distance and a place to be a person in without anyone watching. He'd gotten that. He'd also gotten more than that, in the incremental way the best things arrive. Not announced, not dramatic, but built from small true things accumulated over time until they became something you couldn't imagine not having. "You look like you're thinking about something," Hannah said, beside him. "Everything," he said. She bumped her shoulder against his. "Any conclusions?" He looked at the street. The block party winding down in the late afternoon, neighbors carrying dishes and folding tables, the teenager from number 4 already making notes for next year. Maya and Danny bent over the field guide in fierce consultation. Robert telling Diane something that made her shake her head and laugh. "I'm glad I came back," he said. "To the house?" she said. "To this," he said. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Me too," she said. "For the record." He looked at her. She was looking at the street, the way she sometimes looked at things, directly, without sentimentality, seeing what was actually there rather than what she wanted to see. He loved her in the uncomplicated way of someone who had stopped looking for the right moment and started living in the moment that was actually here. "The porch light," he said. She looked at him. "You said your grandmother kept it on for anyone who might be passing by," he said. "Anyone who needed to know there was a house with a light on." "Yes," she said. "I wasn't passing by," he said. "I'd come home, but I still needed to see it." She held his eyes. "I know," she said. "That's why I keep it on." The August afternoon held them. Imperfect people in an ordinary street in a small town that was, by every external measure, unremarkable, and which was, by the only measure that actually mattered, exactly enough. The light would come on at dusk, as it always did. It would be on when they went to bed, and on when the street went quiet, and on in the small hours when the town slept, and the oak trees stood still, and Sycamore Lane was nothing but itself, dark except for that one amber light on the yellow house porch. Not for someone lost anymore. For the people who had found what they were looking for and wanted, simply and without apology, to live inside it. The party wound down. Neighbors went home. Maya and Danny made plans for the following weekend's research. The dishes were carried inside, the tables folded, the block returned to its ordinary August evening self. Adrian and Hannah walked back across the street together, Maya between them, and the porch light came on at dusk the way it always did, and the three of them went inside. Not yet one house, still two, but getting there, in the unhurried way of people who have stopped being afraid of the time it takes to build something real. Some things don't announce themselves. They accumulate. They arrive not in a single moment, but in 1,000 small ones. A cup of coffee, a fence post, a hand in a backyard, a painted stone, a fish named Gerald, a lopsided Christmas tree that needed someone to take it home. That's how love works, when it's the kind that lasts. Not like a door opening, like a light coming on, slow and steady, until the dark isn't dark anymore and you can't remember exactly when the change happened, only that it did, and that you're grateful, and that it's enough. It's more than enough. It's home.